In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Bonar. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
So here we are again. Don't not just.
Hello and welcome.
Well, it's audio. Nodding doesn't cut it on a podcast.
It's video. People can watch this.
Well, they'd rather listen too, wouldn't they?
Well, you can choose, but you can watch or you can listen. Either way.
Hey, listen, I got some news. You've got some news.
What?
It's happy birthday.
It's upside down.
No, it wasn't. Oh, it was. It's happy birthday.
It's not really. It's just the 100th episode.
to us. It's happy birthday to us. It's our 100th.
Oh, that's a good shot.
That was good, wasn't it? It's happy birthday to us, our 100th podcast. And I did.
Podcast episode. We haven't made 100 podcasts.
Well, we have.
Okay, continue.
Anyway, I didn't think we'd do one. And you nagged me for a long, long time. And my son, Jacob, who is a massive consumer of podcasts, he said, Dad, get into this podcast caper. And I said, I don't know how to do it, not interested. And then there was a landmark happening that made me make a decision.
Yeah, you got punted.
I got punted again from this time from Triple M.
Yeah.
So punted from
3 times.
3 times. And so I said, all right, well, let's have a crack at this. And Kelsey, in the fair income department, I wouldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have done it.
You couldn't have.
Couldn't have. So Kelsey Millennial Menzies, thank you.
That's all right. Now, Luke, lots of people have been asking us for a while to get merchandise.
Oh, yes, you and Nathan have got the merch going. I saw it. Coffee cups, T-shirts, caps, hoodies.
Oh, yeah. So the link for that will be in the description, but you'll be able to find it.
So we'll give
Bonafidepod.com. Finally, we have merch.
We will give some away, but the idea is to sell it and make some coin out of it. So,
Well, why don't, if you...
Well, you can buy it.
Of course. But why don't... First free T-shirt to the best voicemail lever. Voicemail with the best story.
Yeah, good story. Or a jingles. You got to sing it. Leave a comment. Contribute. And you could win some merch. Either a coffee cup, a T-shirt, a cap, or a hoodie.
Perfect. And if you're wondering...
Oh, a beer holder.
Yeah. Now, if you're wondering where headlines and listener mail are, those are in that quick episode we dropped last night. So we're just going to jump right into the guests we have scheduled for today, and that is...
Yeah, Chief Economist with AMP, Shane Oliver, with an in-depth look at what's going on in the world. It was something interesting that I wanted to talk to Shane about. This is probably more for people my vintage. If you are cash poor but asset strong, like you've stopped earning a living, but you have a lot of equity in your home, is a reverse mortgage the go, or are there pitfalls in it? It means you guys inherit less, but we go to the bank. The bank says, yeah, you've got X amount of equity in your house. We'll give it to you, but it comes off the price of your home when you sell it.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea. Anyway, that and what is going on in the Middle East, how does it affect us all? You're going to meet an old mate of mine. His name is Lyle O'Reilly, and he used to be a councillor on the Bathurst City Council. Now, when you worked at 2BS in Bathurst, it was Bathurst Regional Council, but they merged with Evans Shire Council. It's a bigger thing now.
I don't think anyone really
Anyway,
cares.
Lyle O'Reilly is a character. He's a Vietnam vet. He served in Vietnam, joined the army. He wasn't a conscript. He was actually in infantry.
Yeah.
Anyway, he went to Vietnam. He's got some really strong thoughts about the whole Ben Roberts-Smith thing.
Yeah.
And how it's going to affect ex-servicemen and women on Anzac Day.
Yeah.
How it's affected him as a vet. He's got a fascinating story because he was expelled from the Labor Party. He's a devout Ben Chifley fan because he's into trains.
Yeah.
He was a train driver, station master. But he risked being expelled from the Labor Party because he refused to vote and endorse a Labor mayor. And the reason he did it was his principles are unbelievable. He's a fascinating character.
Yeah. And you're also going to speak to James
Glissan, who was a lawyer. Can't wait.
While he drinks from his cup, we're bona fide and busted, but you let him stick around. Through Luke's chilly meltdowns and his bulletproof head sound.
Because my YouTube algorithm knows I am a huge consumer of current affairs, documentaries, and news stories, along came a podcast that so thoroughly impressed me. It was a lawyer by the name of James Glissan. And James, who joins me today on the Bonafide podcast, was a police officer. And he went to the academy, wore a uniform, walked the beat, but he studied law. Down the track, he became a prosecutor. And now he's a defence lawyer. He is from Glissan and Associates Lawyers. They describe themselves as a boutique law firm, but I've got a funny feeling the way James Glissan is getting traction, he's going to be a huge law firm very, very soon. But the thing that, hang on, I haven't finished giving you a rap yet, James. Thing that so thoroughly impressed me, because I've been in the communication business, I've been doing this radio thing for a little while now, and James is a brilliant communicator. And I also love the fact that he's apolitical. He doesn't get involved in politics. He educates and explains the law and how it affects us real people in a brilliant, brilliant way. And I said to Kelsey and Thomas, I've got to talk to this bloke. And we've got him with us now. James, congratulations on your podcast. It is sensationally informative. And it's a credit to you.
Thank you.
And I found it so educational and so interesting. In fact, I'm leaning forward every time you talk about a topic. And so well done. And I feel like I know you. So that's a wrap to you, mate. Well done.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You know, and you speak about the apolitical aspect of things, and that's always been very important to me because so far as I see it, the only reason that I should be doing this is if I provide value to people, if I help them understand how the law works and they can make better decisions. I'm not here to move anybody's moral compass, not even by a degree. That's not my responsibility, and I wouldn't want that responsibility. So I want people to just be more informed so they can make decisions the way that they want the world to change, but from a basis where they understand the law and the mechanisms behind it without it being boring, which can sometimes be a bit of a struggle.
Well, it's not boring. This is what a great communicator you are. It's not boring. And there are so many things I want to talk to you about. We haven't got time to do them all today because we'd be here 3 or 4 hours.
A long time.
A long time. Down the track, because at the recording of today's podcast, Ben Roberts-Smith is applying for bail. So we don't know at the time of our recording whether he'll make bail. There is so much confusion surrounding this really high-profile case and has been for many years now. Channel 9 have rerun the 60 Minutes show. They're obviously pushing a narrative. And everyone in this country that goes to court must enjoy the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And this is now a criminal law case. So what about you and I talk about the Ben Roberts-Smith criminal case a little bit down the track as we get a bit closer to that court trial? Can we do that?
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of questions that people have as this progresses, and a big part of the reason for that is nobody's ever really taught how the system works. So yeah, consider it an open invitation. I'd be happy to come back on.
As I say, I've been in radio since the 18th of September 1978, and I've been surrounded by talk presenters and journalists. I started out as a music jock, but I've always been drawn towards current affairs.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I have been involved in compliance training twice a year for many, many years now. So I got a fairly good idea of media law, the difference between a civil case and a criminal case. I've certainly got a fair grip of sub judice or sub judice, as some people call it, Latin for under law, the difference between libel, defamation, a contempt of court. And out of those three, contempt of court is worse. It's a criminal offence.
Yes.
The other two are civil, but can still get you in a lot of trouble. And so the Ben Roberts-Smith thing I find fascinating, and the whole sub judice or sub judice thing, where I don't know how the hell they're going to find an untainted jury. I have no idea. I guess it was a bit like Lindy Chamberlain or any other high-profile case where it has spent so much time in front of the public. How do you find a jury that won't have an opinion or at least be able to say, a bit like Brittany Higgins?
Very much so.
You understand where I'm going? And so I just don't know how that's going to play out.
Look, I don't know. I've always had the Chamberlain case in the back of my mind ever since I learnt about it properly. And then, of course, since that new evidence came to light not all that long ago to suggest that, they were telling the truth the whole way through. And it's just such an unbelievably tragic story. I have a young daughter of my own who's almost 3. It's going too fast. And to have your child taken away in that manner and to die in that manner and then become public enemy number 1 and then spend time in jail. And then, of course, this is the real issue. When you talk about the sub judice issue, when we're looking at the current case, the real issue is everybody remembers the reporting in the first instance. They remember the allegations, they remember the footage, they remember the arrest. But let's say, and I don't know, there's no way for me to know this, but let's say in, 1-2 years' time, it comes to light that there maybe wasn't enough to proceed with the prosecution in the first place. May not, but if that's the case, nobody's going to really remember that. That's not going to be the thing that comes up all the time. The damage has been done. And when you talk about, Channel 9 in particular with doing reruns of old issues, and it's quite tricky because I know that they have a very unique job in the way that they have to keep interest and inform people. But when that information starts to appear, even if it's only appearing to be one-sided, it's a massive problem because now we're not just talking about the court of public opinion. We're talking about the actual court, which is when you have a jury informed by the public. So people need to be a lot more careful. I've had people reach out to me a lot when it comes to this particular issue, and they will send me links of, other podcasts of people doing their own, I guess, informal interviews. And they don't have the media training that you have. They're not aware of the law as it stands, but they still may have a decent amount of traction. And I won't name names, but some of them have quite a large audience. That's a really dangerous road to travel down. Not just for the particular presenter, but for the public and for the justice system as a whole. So this is really shining a spotlight on a lot of issues.
It is. Once again, we'll talk more about it as it gets closer. And you had a fascinating chat with Mark Burris on Straight Talk, which the algorithm hands me a lot, and I'm glad it does. The other one is Gary Jubilin and I Catch Killers. So that's the YouTube algorithm that's talking to me. And thank God that algorithm is there.
Yeah.
Mind you, you're going to be very careful what you click on and watch because it'll keep giving it to you. So you're going to be very careful.
Yeah, it's true.
You're going to be very... However, I just last thing on Ben Roberts. Everyone I talk to says, surely what goes on a battlefield where it's an unidentifiable enemy, and I've got a very good mate of mine who was a soldier in Vietnam. His name is Lyle O'Reilly. Now, he was a former councillor on Bathurst City Council, and I knew him really well when I was on 2BS in Bathurst. Now, he was general infantry. He was a member of the army, not a conscript. But some of the things that he and the Americans and other Australians did, he said, were not in the rule books. But they were ordered by their superiors to do whatever it takes. And there are alleged war crimes in Vietnam which are still in living memory. And I think of Breaker Morant.
Yes.
An Australian that was tried under British law, who was tried for murdering, 12 Boer. However, he was found guilty, court-martialed and shot. And so people are saying, well, how come the Ben Roberts-Smith thing isn't a military trial? Well, he's not a member of the ADF. He's a civilian now. And all of this happened a long time ago. And I'm talking, the general public say, well, the ground is very, very foggy where the rules are in conflict and, and your life's in danger and you're living on the edge. And so there's a lot of confusion out there, and that's why the law is the law.
Yeah, there is a huge amount of confusion, and I've seen that argument. I've seen it on both sides, right?
Yeah.
But what the problematic aspect of that thinking is, it's absolutely right from a philosophical point of view, because it's impossible unless you've been in situations like that to understand the pressures and the mindset and the context. But when we're talking about this upcoming trial, which is, as you say, it's subject to sub judice, it's really quite difficult because there's not an awful lot you can talk about other than procedure, which is really what people are interested in at this point, even if they don't know it. But taking that line of reasoning, it's difficult to know what would be reasonable. It's difficult to know what would be going through your mind and what should be done. That's really more of an argument for sentence if it gets to it, because it still assumes that the allegations have occurred. And that's one of the issues we're finding with how heavily publicised this is.
That's right. And how do you find an untainted jury? Because he's innocent till proven guilty in this criminal law, and it will be a jury trial. And the jury, chances are the jury has no idea about military protocol and what goes on a battlefield. But maybe that's a good thing because it's a criminal trial, not a military trial, and you're being judged by 12 of your peers. Some people have said, well, maybe it should be a judge-only trial, someone who understands law. I know you feel differently about that. You think a jury trial is a good thing. But look, you have an obligation to Mark Burris. Once again, Mark's podcast is Straight Talk, and it is absolutely fantastic. So we'll leave.
Great guy, great structure, and, highly recommend it.
Okay.
But, when we get to it, we will come back, and you have my word. I'll come back and we'll talk about the updates.
I got your word?
You've got my word.
Because you're a man of enormous integrity, and I appreciate that. I wanted to talk to you about something else I saw you do, and we may not have time for that today because I'm going to chuck a swerve ball at you. I saw you doing an explanation of who is freer,
yes,
USA or Australia. The United States, in their national anthem, the land of the free,
right?
And here in Australia, for we are one and free. Well, what does the word free actually mean to the average citizen? And it was such a bloody good explanation. And you went through a checklist, and we'll see if I don't know if we'll have time today, but there was something I wanted to throw at you. We recently saw the death of Desi Freeman, and a lot of people are saying good riddance. The fascinating thing to come out of that, the tragic thing is 2 innocent police officers lost their lives. And Desi was a strange character. And we find out he was a sovereign citizen. And there's still investigations underway as to whether or not he was harboured and enabled by other people of the same mindset. And this YouTube algorithm often throws me arrests in America, and they've got their body cam on, arresting sovereign citizens.
Yes.
So can I ask you about sovereign citizens?
Yeah.
Who are they and what do they believe in? Where does this mindset come from that they don't have to answer to Australian law, whether it be federal law or state law? Are you happy to go down that path today?
Definitely. It's something that I saw when I was on the street policing, then again in prosecution.
Okay.
And it's been a continuing theme.
Okay,
and it seems
start
to be
from the beginning. What are sovereign citizens? What's their MO?
Sure. So sovereign citizens are essentially, it's a term for a group of people who believe that the government is no longer legitimate and that the courts are not legitimate. And there are several underlying conspiracy theories, but the overarching idea is that because the government isn't legitimate, the laws aren't legitimate, and then it doesn't apply to them.
So how can they say the law doesn't apply to them? I mean, it does when it suits them. If they get Centrelink payments or they enjoy our hospitals, which are built by taxation, which is legislated, the roads that they travel on. They don't drive, they travel. You can explain that in a second if you can.
Yeah.
So so they want their cake and eat it too. Where does this mindset come from that the law and our system of government doesn't apply to them?
Yeah, I mean, they're 2 separate issues. Where it comes from is the US. That's where it first started, and it got imported over here for similarly disenfranchised people. But the root cause of it, so far as I can see, because again, I've dealt with these people in many different roles, and the most telling role, because when you're in uniform, you're the enemy, they don't want to talk to you, they hate you. When you're in a suit and you're prosecuting, it's different. They have to talk to you because you're the other side. So I would speak with them and I'd see, because they'd always self-represent, like, what is it that we really have an issue here with? What's your case? What are you trying to run? I just want to understand so it can be fair. And more often than not, they would speak to me. And once that defensive barrier came down, what it came down to was that they were completely disenfranchised with the system They felt completely alienated from it. They didn't understand it. What they believed the Australian legal system to be, because they were never taught it properly, turned out to be something very different from what they believed it to be. And the easiest way for them to reconcile that, for them to make that make sense, was to, instead of going through and recognizing that the system is not what they think it is and having to learn about this new system that some of them have been living in for 40 years without realizing, the easiest option is to go across to somebody who offers you an immense sense of power, a group that offers you an immense sense of personal agency, and say, well, no, the laws don't apply to me, and this is why they don't apply to me. And then, of course, there are always people who will sell you courses to teach you what to say. There's always a financial incentive.
Right.
And it never works. And it's quite tragic because more often than not, I mean, the Desi Freeman thing, it's a very extreme case.
Okay, take us through it. Take us through it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the extreme cases are becoming more common. And this resistance is tending to become more violent, which is a real problem that we're going to have to address. But the way that we address it is not by continuing to make fun of them and push them away. The way that we address it is by trying to build a bit of a bridge and give them a reasonable path back instead of continuing to ostracize them. When it comes to their beliefs, you can see that there's this real tension in their mind in court because they say that they believe that the law is illegitimate. They say that they don't believe the government's legitimate. But then when they have to make an argument, the penny kind of drops. I mean, the fact they've turned up to court in the first place indicates that they believe there is some legitimacy. Otherwise, they wouldn't worry about not turning up. And it's such a messy issue that we really should be addressing because it's symptomatic of a bigger problem.
Yeah, okay. I mentioned travelling, and this is something I see a lot on the web, on the police cam.
Yeah.
You were just driving this car. You were speeding. Can I see your license, registration, and insurance? Why do American police need your insurance? Can I ask you that?
Yeah, so it's different. So I lived in the US for a little bit. In many ways, our two countries are very different to each other, but we share a very fundamental similarity, being the common law and how it developed. In the US, the system, especially when you talk about the DMV, which is the American version of transport or service, it's very outdated. So a lot of this stuff is in paper. Like you have printed out insurance, printed out registration, you have to keep it with you. Here, and I can speak to this having been a police officer and having used the systems, here it's all on the system. Do you know what I mean? Like the registration is connected to the police system, the driver or the registered owner is connected. So we don't need it as much. And to the point at which if you put the number plate in the system, or Highway Patrol have cameras that do this for them, they don't have to do it manually, it will alert you if the car is unregistered or uninsured. So we are very advanced when it comes to that level of technology and enforcement.
Okay.
The US is a little bit behind.
Okay, all right, that explains that. And the other thing, because a lot of Australians watch a lot of American TV shows and they think they're lawyers. We'll get back to sovereign citizens in a second, but I'm going sideways, okay?
Sure, I love sideways. Keep going.
Okay, so you see in the American TV shows when they pull someone up, they suspect them of speeding or being under the influence of something, and they read them their Miranda rights.
Yes.
Miranda. You often hear Australians enforcement officers say you have the right to remain silent, and if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. What are Miranda rights? I know about Ernesto Miranda and that landmark case, 1966, I think. So explain Miranda rights and then explain our rights.
Yep.
Is there a difference?
Yep, massive. So the easiest way to draw that distinction between the American Miranda rights and our rights, and traffic is a really handy example, so I'm grateful for that because it makes my job a bit easier. In the US, your rights are yours, you own them, they apply to you no matter the circumstance, okay? So when you have a right to remain silent, you have that right, it is yours. There's nobody can infringe on that. Here, and you'll notice that the words are very different. Here, we call it a caution. Okay, so when you get given a caution, that doesn't come from any right that you have. That comes from the Evidence Act. Our rights are basically laws. They're legislative provisions that give us protections, but they're not rights in the way that the US have rights. We have very few actual rights, express rights. Traffic, the reason I say that's a great example, because a lot of people don't know this. here, at least in New South Wales, and it's similar across most of the country, you don't have a right to remain silent when it comes to traffic matters.
We don't have a right to remain.
No.
So the police officer pulls us up.
Yep.
When it comes to random breath testing, they don't need a reason.
It doesn't need to be
called
random.
That's why it's called random.
Yeah.
So if you're pulled up at an RBT, for example, and the police officer comes over to your window, if you don't wind the window down and engage and become compliant, you can't say, I have the right to remain silent. I don't have to wind my window down. I do not have to take part in this.
That's going to end in one way, and that's you being arrested so they can figure out who you are.
Okay, it'll end in tears.
Yeah.
And great pain.
Yeah.
Not physical. But
potentially financial.
Not anymore. They don't question. Police officers don't question you about the head and the body with a phone book anymore.
No, not that I've ever seen. No.
But yeah, the Roger Rogerson days. That's that's something else we could talk about one day.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to your rights. What are our rights?
So when you think about our rights, and we'll sort of keep it to your actual rights, your constitutional rights, you have a right to a trial by jury for Commonwealth offences for the most part. You have the right of the Commonwealth not impeding on your religion. So freedom of religion against the government. And you have a strange one that nobody would ever expect to have or ever potentially use, protection from discrimination between the states. So one state can't discriminate on you or discriminate against you because you're from New South Wales, for example. But that's really it. You know, we have one more express right, which is compensation if the government takes your property. But that's it. They're the express ones. When you're talking about things like speech, association, you know, just listing off some of the big ones in the US, speech, association, silence, we don't have them as express rights. They just don't exist. The closest thing we have is an implied right to political communication, but that's not necessarily a personal right that you can exercise. It's something that it prevents the government from making laws about.
So how well educated do you think the average Australian is on what their rights actually are? Because they're our rights. Should they teach it at school?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a really big advocate for this. We do an almost embarrassing job as a country of being able to teach people what your position is.
Life skills?
Oh, life skills generally, absolutely. But when it comes to law especially, there's really nothing there. There's nothing there about what your responsibilities are, what your rights and obligations are. There's nothing. So when people leave school and they enter the adult world, that's it. You're expected to know everything, but you've never been taught how it works, let alone what the rules of the game are. So it's not particularly fair, in my opinion.
And ignorance is not a defence.
No. It's not. And it gets people really unstuck. And again, traffic's a great way because traffic affects everybody. Everybody's familiar with how that can affect their lives if they lose their license. Being ignorant of the law is not an excuse. It won't help you at all.
So getting back to sovereign citizens, just to wrap this up for me.
Yep.
Are they just naive, misguided and misled, or are they lunatics, or a bit of both?
No, I think for the most part, they're people who have either had a very difficult life and feel completely outed by the system, and then they recognize or they sort of pick up on some things that are half true. And the half true parts are things like Australians don't have rights like we consider them to exist in the US. But then that extra bit, that extra half, is where it starts to become problematic. Because they say, and because you don't have rights, your government isn't legitimate. And that's not true, because the two systems between the US and Australia are very different in how they approach things. Very different. And the only way that we can build the system that we as a country want, you know, if it comes to rights, if people want rights that are their own and that can't be infringed, the only way that we're going to get that is if people know how to get it and the process to get it. Turning away and following something that sounds great but has no actual value, that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the people who follow it, and it doesn't help the rest of us.
Yeah. It's almost a cult. It's almost a religious brainwashing. I don't know.
It can be quite fanatical quite quickly.
Fanatical, yeah. And I remember, and I'm talking about Leonard George Castley, Prince Leonard of Hutt, who abdicated from the Commonwealth and the Federation and formed his own country. He said it was a separate Australian state, and he governed it. And by the way, when he passed away, he left his son in $3 million worth of debt. But he was a colourful character that got a lot of airtime because of who he was and the way he carried on. Even printed his own money.
It's fascinating. And, you have examples like that where they're largely harmless, but then taking Desi as an example, even if it turns out that he wasn't a sovereign citizen but shared similar beliefs, the problem is that group, the sovereign citizen group, is then a group that is going to sort of plant their flag there, and it works then as justification, and they say, see, he was doing what we said is right and he got killed for it. So it's really difficult. I mean, ideological battles, whether they're overseas or domestic, are inherently difficult to fight, and they're really difficult to come to a peaceful resolution.
It's a funny old world, isn't it?
It is.
And you know what? I think the internet and social media is exacerbating it.
It is. And one of the reasons that I decided to do what I'm doing on the internet is to try and provide information coming from somebody that hopefully people trust, and not try and move them. So they can look at what the law actually is, how it actually works, and then make their own decision as to whether or not they think that's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Just to try and combat it, because a lot of people just love to get the clicks, and they love to stir up a lot of controversy, and it's so unbelievably damaging.
It is. And if you're watching these clips on social media or YouTube or whatever, so many people, when they're in trouble, try and ring 911. That's how bad it's.
Yeah, it's true. I've seen it.
That's how bad it's become.
Yeah.
Teaching kids in school what their basic rights are from someone who's apolitical like yourself. I think it's got to be taught in school.
Yeah. Look, I completely agree with you. It's something that I've been very passionate about. And I think it has the capacity to do a huge amount of good for a long period of time, because every person then who leaves school will leave knowing more than we did, certainly more than I did when I left school.
I think we should also be teaching young people how to budget, how to cook,
how tax works,
how to change a tyre.
Like really practical skills.
We're very big on sex education now, but we're not so big on our rights with the law, which is so important.
Yeah, and there's a huge amount. I think there's a huge amount of good to be done there. If somebody would just, if the government would just even consider including that more prominently in the standards, I think it would make a big difference.
James, there's something else that's on my mind, and maybe it's a separate chat with us as well, but I've got to bring it up because a regular on the Bonafide podcast is David Littleproud, the former leader of the Nats. In fact, he's better now that he's not the leader, because he's got a lot more to say without the weight of leadership of a coalition partner on his shoulders. But we've been talking for a long time, and we all remember the split with the Nats. In fact, the coalition, 2 splits in less than 12 months. And you had senior nationals Bridget McKenzie, Ross Cadell and Susan McDonald, who quit the shadow cabinet when, with less than 2 days to look at the hate law legislation, it didn't go to a party room either. And they said, we're not ready to vote. We need more time to look at this. Now, that's before the Senate now. But these new hate laws on the surface probably seem pretty romantic. An art gallery display being shut down because it depicted 3 people in Nazi uniforms, when the art gallery's defence was it was satire. But somebody said, no, that's offensive, and it being shut down before the hate laws have even gone through through the Senate. These hate laws, David Littleproud said, we weren't ready to vote because there's a lot more. We haven't had a good look at what's under the hood. And we don't want to buy the car before we've seen what's under the hood.
No.
Does it concern you?
Greatly. And I think one of the reasons that, even if people agree with the mission that's been put forward with respect to that law or that series of laws, the real concern from my perspective and from my background is that this is the first time in a long time that we've seen the government really flex its muscles when it comes to making law for things that most Australians think they have a right to. So, for example, speech or expression. And this is a really important distinction to draw, because it's not just about the speech. It goes so much further than that when I read through it. It goes into who you can associate with, who you can support as a group, It goes into, you talk about the Nazi symbols. It's not just that they're concerned that that's going to cause hate or drift in the community. It's that they've changed it so that it used to be if you displayed a symbol, you had to intend that it would offend somebody. You had to intend it to basically be quite negative and quite Nazi-ish.
Like Prince Harry turning up to a fancy dress.
Right.
Now it was bad taste, perhaps.
It was bad taste.
Inappropriate for a royal, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But was it promoting hate speech? Would he have been arrested? Could he have been arrested? If these hate laws go through as they are,
yes, yep.
Could Prince Harry have been arrested for hate?
Yes, absolutely. Because what they've done is they've changed it. So now it's a strict liability offence. So it doesn't matter, what your intent was. It only matters whether or not you did it. So that's the issue that particular cafe and bar fell into, is that even though it was satire, they still had the symbol, being the swastika, displayed. And that's the offence. So it's really, really difficult when things like this, which are so powerful, get rushed through, because I don't care if people think that's controversial. It was rushed very quickly, especially when you're talking about the subject matter that was being dealt with. And now we're in a situation where nobody really knows where they stand. And of course, the media cycle's moved on, so it's not getting any attention in explaining how it's going to work or affect people.
Let me give you an example and tell me if I'm being ludicrous. And I appreciate you are straight down the line. You are not politically motivated. You are only concerned with the law and educating us as to what the law is about. My son's wife, is from Brazil, and her father is a legal representative in the government in Rio. Now, when we met him and her mother and brother, they came to our place for lunch. First time we met them, it was great. Now, he is involved in a government that has been accused of corruption in the past. He's a legal advisor. Now, let's just say there was a member of that government that was under suspicion for terrorism or for spying or for inappropriate conduct. And because I'm now associated with a person involved with that government who's come here for lunch because he is my son's new father-in-law, is it possible for the federal police to take me in for questioning because I know of someone that may know of someone who's of interest? And is it true that I wouldn't be able to tell anyone where I was going, why I was being detained, that they could hold me for 24 hours, question me for 8 hours, have an hour's break and then another 8 hours? I can't talk about it when I get home. And all it is because I happened to accidentally have lunch with someone that could have been of interest. Is that a stretch or could that happen?
No, that's a good summary. That's how the powers work when it comes to this bill that's before Parliament at the moment. And those powers already exist. They're just being extended, so they're being made permanent. It used to be that it had to be voted on every couple of years, and they've expanded the scope. So before, you bring up terrorism. Before, it was for terrorism. But now, it's for anything that ASIO looks after.
Since Bondi?
Yep.
Since Bondi, the 14th of December, they've put the pedal to the metal.
Yep.
To rush this through.
Yep.
And can you explain, sorry to do this to you, James.
No, that's okay. That's what I'm here for.
Lack of a sunset clause. What does all that mean?
Yeah, so when we're talking about these powers that ASIO have, they were in place from 2003. They've been around for a long time. But because the government recognised they were such powerful investigative techniques that they could bring people couldn't talk about it, they could be questioned for 8 hours at a time, up to 5 years is the maximum for not answering questions or not complying. Because that's so powerful, they said, well, we're not going to need this forever. So we're going to have this tabled and it's going to be voted on. And if Australia gets to a point where we don't need it anymore, where there's not the same level of threat, bear in mind this is post 9/11, so there was a huge amount of threat at that period of time, then if we don't vote them back in, the sunset clause means that the sun has set and that it's over. It no longer exists. What this is, what's before Parliament at the moment, is saying, no, we want them forever and we want it to expand outside of terrorism. So it's a huge shift. It's a really big shift.
It's funny, because there was a young Labor politician from Western Sydney who many, many years ago would have been absolutely abhorred with this kind of legislation. That person is the Prime Minister now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting lens to look at this through. Because in 2003, or when it was being debated, he was exceptionally against it. Very impassioned, some good speeches were made. And now, of course, being the Prime Minister, you would expect that to continue through because the powers haven't changed.
I don't want to get you involved in politics. It's because of the polls.
Yeah, and that's the point I was trying to make. It's not the parties, and it's not necessarily the people in politics. It's just the way that this disconnect between how the law works and what people think the law is getting bigger. Because the less people know about it, the less informed they are, the less they know how to read it and how it's going to affect them. The more things like hate speech laws, the ASIO powers can sort of slide through without creating much controversy because people aren't aware of what's happening.
Yeah, we need to do a deeper dive into this.
Yeah, we could talk about that for hours, mate. It's up to you.
We need, because, the Australian public weren't asked. David Littleproud had 1.5 days to make a decision to vote on it in the Senate. And they said, no, we're not ready. And so the reaction was another split in the coalition. Speaking of putting the pedal to the metal because of polls and public opinion, the Prime Minister was absolutely dead set against the Royal Commission into what happened on the 14th of December. He flew the kite, saw which way strongly the wind was blowing, and has then finally said, we'll have a royal. What is a Royal Commission and what's involved? What does it solve? Have you got time today, or is that another topic?
I can answer that very quickly. Very quickly. And I've plenty of time. I said all the time a world for you. When it comes to a Royal Commission, it is designed by itself to be a really, really powerful investigation, okay? So the Royal Commission, the Commissioner, can look at anything that they're told they're allowed to look at, and they can compel documents to be produced. So it allows for, the point of it, the purpose it exists, is it allows for really, really clear transparency and a really powerful, in-depth investigation into whatever the topic is. People, I think, for the most part, know that. We've had the Royal Commission into banks. We had it into, child sex abuse in institutions historically. And now we have the one that we're dealing with currently, which is the combating anti-Semitism. What's really important is it doesn't matter what the Royal Commission's called. This is really important for people to understand. What matters is the terms of reference. And that's just a fancy government way of saying that these are the things you're allowed to look at. These are the goalposts. You must not go outside of them. And the people who set that, the goalposts, the framework, that's not the public, that's the government when they set the commission up. And there have been times where parties will say, well, no, we need to go slightly outside of this because it's relevant to what you're looking at. Inevitably, they will say, well, no, we're not going to do that because we're not allowed to. And then the other big thing that people don't understand for the most part, this won't apply to everyone, but a lot of people don't understand, is at the end of the commission puts together a big report and it covers off on all of the evidence, the submissions, everything you'd expect it to have in it. And then at the end is what's the most important thing. This is the whole purpose of a commission. They put forward a series of recommendations for change to either prevent something.
Is the government obliged to follow those recommendations, or after a Royal Commission can they say stuff that let's ignore it?
No, they're not obliged to. So they can pick the ones that, for whatever reason, I'm not going to get into the reasoning because I've never held that job and I just don't know, but they pick the ones based on however they decide that they want to implement, and then they essentially put the rest into storage and may activate them at some point down the track.
Another deep dive is needed with James Glissan on that one.
Yeah, it's a really, really important thing for people to understand because everybody calls for a Royal Commission, but not everybody knows what it means.
James, you and I need to make a regular date of this.
Sounds like a plan.
We have absolutely no money we can't put you on the payroll. However, I'm happy to mention Glissan and Associates lawyers and need to have you on speed dial. No, I don't. Not anymore.
Mate, I don't do this for the money. I do it because I think it's important that people know the system they live in and what they can do.
I just think it's fascinating. You actually walked a beat in uniform, went to law school, prosecuted, and now you're in the business of defence. I've got a question for you.
Sure.
See, I go sideways, James. You bear with me.
Good. It makes it more fun.
When a client comes to you and they need your defence, they need counsel, not just counsel, probably representation in court. Do you ask them, Did you do it? See, a lot of people would like to know.
Yeah.
Do defence lawyers deliberately defend people they know are bloody guilty or not?
No.
How do you do that?
It's not. So it's a lot more
There's
complicated.
there's an old joke
Yeah.
that sharks don't attack lawyers through a professional courtesy.
It's a good joke. I love that one.
Okay, you can use it, but that's the perception, I think, and it shouldn't be because you're one of the good guys. So when a client comes to you as a defence lawyer, you don't and sits down and says, "I've been charged. Here's the list of charges." What do you call it?
Yeah. Charges, indictment, sequences. It's all the same.
Yeah. Do you ever say, "Well, did you do it?"
No, because that's not the job, right? So what I found really interesting is that moving from prosecution to defence, and I do more than criminal defence, but it's my passion. I really love it, but do a lot of other things as well. But when it comes to criminal defence work, it's almost the same job. So what you do is you get a brief of evidence which contains everything that the prosecution has that they say proves their case. And then you look at it and you assess whether or not it really does that. Does it prove the case? Is there a weakness? How strong is it? And that's the same as prosecuting, because you look at a brief and you let whoever the investigator is know, you're like, well, we're like 80% of the way there, but that's not going to cut it. You need to figure out if you can meet this element, this element, this element. So when you're looking at defense work, one of two things happens usually. Either the prosecution brief is ridiculously strong. To run a defendant hearing would be legal suicide. It would make no sense. At which point I never tell anyone what to do. It's not my life. I'm just looking after their matter. So I will say, I don't like your odds of running a not guilty plea. It's a very strong brief, but that doesn't mean that we can't run a really good sentence application and try and get the court to recognise who you are, who you were beforehand, why this happened, and why the penalty should not be at the highest level. Or the other end is you get the brief and there's a bunch of holes in it and it doesn't make a bunch of sense. And the advice might be, well, I don't think they have much of a shot at proving this. But it never comes down to an ethical decision of, do I think the person did it and how do I represent somebody like that? It always comes down to, has the prosecution got enough evidence? Because that's their job and that's the high standard that they're put to, and they should be held to that standard.
It's absolutely fascinating, and you're quite right. So many of us are so ignorant. Beyond reasonable doubt, presumption of innocence and being proved guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Now, I'll tell you where I started to think our system is broken down.
Sure.
And I was a little bit close to this because I knew Kelly Lane when she was a little girl. Her aunt and I were seeing each other and we used to babysit her and her brother. And I won't mention his name, but his name has been kept out of all of this.
Yep.
And so I had more than just an interest because she was a beautiful little girl. It's common knowledge her dad was a football coach and a police officer at Manly. He was the coach of the Manly first grade rugby union side at one point. And when they played on usually it was a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday night, me and Kelly's aunt, we used to go and babysit them at Fairlight.
Yep.
So I took a great interest in this. Kelly Lane, yes, told many, many serious untruths. Yes, she was promiscuous. She did have other children that she relinquished. She, yes, hoped to participate in the 2000 Olympics in water polo. However, there was no body. Massive manhunt for the father, who she wasn't sure of his name. However, in my mind of reasonable doubt, and she was convicted for murder. And, of course, a few years ago, parole revoked because she went outside the parameters of her parole conditions. Anyway, I just thought in my mind, and I'm biased, and I didn't know her since she was 6 and 7. But to me, as a reasonable spectator of the case, I thought there was more than reasonable doubt. It surprised me. So what is reasonable doubt? And how does a jury know what reasonable... sorry, go on.
No. Don't apologise. They're good questions and they're ones that lots of people have. So you've got two issues, right? The first one, I'll answer your question directly, but if you'll permit me to give a background on it afterwards, I think it would help. So beyond a reasonable doubt, the jury has to find, and there are directions given by the judge to help them understand what that means. But it means that the jury must have not, an absence of any doubt. There can be little doubts, but not a reasonable doubt. So if the doubt in their mind that it didn't happen, say, is at a point where they think, I think it's reasonable that little doubt that I have might be correct. That's a reasonable doubt. And if you have that, then the prosecution hasn't met its burden. Why I'm a proponent of jury trials is it is far better to have more than one person making that determination. Because if you can convince, as the prosecution, a dozen people that it happened, and to a point where none of them have any reasonable doubts at all, then you've met the burden. And that's what's expected.
There's no body.
Well, that's the trick. And this is why I wanted to give a bit of background into it, because that's the legal test for beyond a reasonable doubt. That's how that works with juries and how that standard works. But nothing ever happens in isolation in the law. So what you'll see, and I can point to you, probably not today, but on another time, I can point to you times where it's changed. You can go through the Evidence Act. Now, you've got to remember the beyond a reasonable doubt thing, that's based on the evidence, because they're determining what did and didn't happen. That's their job as a fact finder.
So is it sometimes with a jury, is it a case of who's the better salesman, the defence or the prosecutor?
Sometimes, but there are structural.
And the jury stops looking at the evidence in front of them, even though they're instructed by the judge. But is it sometimes who's the best salesperson, the best performer?
Sometimes it's what you're selling. And that's why I bring up the Evidence Act, because there are changes that previously some evidence would never be allowed before a jury to see. And that would have had a big effect. But there have been changes, big changes, very recently when it comes to things like tendency evidence. Now, that's a complicated concept, but the easiest way to explain it is if you have, more than one allegation, are you allowed to look at those separately to inform each other? And it used to be the case that no, you weren't allowed to do that because it was something that the court considered to be, I think it was referred to as circular reasoning, because you're saying that a series of unproven acts can help prove each other. But that changed, and that only changed, I think, last week.
Or bringing up someone's past record.
Yep, that's a big one. Character has a lot to do with it. I mean, the Evidence Act, I think it's got a really bad reputation for being dry, but it's the most important thing that we have in our legal system, especially when it comes to criminal matters. Often when I was teaching criminal law at university, when you'd go through, even though I wasn't meant to be teaching evidence, they were interested in it and I love it. So I was happy to, spend an extra 30 minutes going through it. They were shocked to realise that the Evidence Act doesn't apply the way they think they do. Some things are allowed in that objectively, reasonably, you might think shouldn't be. And on the other end, some things that should be allowed in are often kept out for a reason. So it's just the problem with trying to help people understand, and the issue I'm running into with my YouTube channel is there is so much to cover. There's so much to cover.
Oh, yeah.
But all of it is really important, and every single person who engages with it, watches, leaves a comment, asks questions, they're clever. They're really clever questions. They're brilliant questions. So people shouldn't be discouraged from learning about it, and you don't need a law degree to know how it works.
As opposed to my dumbass questions today.
No, they're not dumb. They're good questions.
No, I am a dumbass, but what I somehow managed to tap into is I can hear my listeners asking questions and I ask them.
Yeah,
that's how I operate. You are fascinating, and what really shits me is that you've been a police officer, a prosecutor. You now have a law firm, Glissan and Associates. You've taught law, or you're teaching law at university, and you look 30.
Yeah. I don't feel it.
That shits me.
I don't feel it. I feel, especially with a 2.5-year-old, I do not feel 30. But
you look 25. No,
now you're just being kind.
No. You are a really, really great communicator and educator, and I'm so glad that my algorithm found you. Where do people find you on YouTube?
It's just my name, James Glissan, James Glissan Official. But I'll pop up. I seem to be everywhere at the moment, so. And
Glissan and Associates lawyers.
Yeah.
Well, James, what we've done is we've lit a fuse.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot to talk about down the track. So I don't know how often you're free, but gee whiz, I'd love to talk to you on a regular basis about these really important issues that affect all of us.
They do. They're really important issues. And I think there's been, in the past, a tendency for people to say that, or to pretend that they don't care all that much. But now that so much is changing and so much is happening, people have dropped that and they're starting to say, no, I actually do care about this. So can you please explain how this works? I think it's really important.
I do too, James. And, how many Australians have read the Constitution, let alone understand it?
Not many.
The movie The Castle, it was the vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the vibe of the thing, you know?
You know, I was talking to somebody I have a great deal of respect for who's been at the bar for a while, and we were talking about that when we were driving out for a criminal matter in the country. And he said, you know, if they wanted if people want an accurate representation of how the system actually works, that movie should have been cut about 30 minutes short. But people need to know. They need to know how it works and how they can have an impact and a change. So conversations like this I'm always grateful for, and I'll always make time for.
Well, James, I can't thank you enough, mate. God, it's a pleasure to meet you. I felt like I already knew you.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
I did. And please, can we stay in touch? And I'm going to need your personal mobile number in case I get into trouble.
I'll send it to you. Don't you worry.
James Glissan, the man who makes the law easier to understand, because we are all entitled to understand it and know what our rights actually are instead of what we think they are by what we see on the internet or American TV shows.
Yep. Absolutely.
James, let's talk again soon, brother.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Got the bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the look on a blues. But they're the kind that chase away the gloom. Tapping my feet, tapping my
Shane Oliver is with us from AM Peach. He is the chief economist. Good Lord, good day to you. Episode 100. This is episode 100, Shane.
Oh, my God. Has it been that long?
Here we are, Shane, and there's a lot to talk about. The government has announced in the May budget they're going to increase spending on defence. I also want to talk about Senator Jackie Lambie from Tasmania, who says she is sick and tired and fed up of senior public servants being paid over $1 million a year. And we can talk about the pros and cons of paying public servants lots of money. But something I want to talk to you about, and I'm sure there are lots of people in their 60s now who are either retired or approaching retirement, who are cash poor but asset rich. They have a lot of equity.
Is that us? You're referring to us, Luke.
Well, it's you more than me. But who bought a house a long, long time ago. ASIC is urging senior Australians to consider the alternatives to a reverse mortgage. So, Shane Oliver, let's touch on that first. What is a reverse mortgage? Is it a good idea?
Well, a reverse mortgage is quite simple, Luke. They've been around for the last maybe a couple of decades now, and that is where in a situation where you're in retirement but you're cash poor, you don't want to sell the family home, so you want some extra income or some extra cash. And a reverse mortgage will give you that. Positives from it are there's no regular payments. You get to stay in the home. You do get that extra income, and it gives you flexibility in retirement in terms of what you might want to do. But there's a lot of downsides. The interest accrues, so you're not making regular payments.
Yeah.
And the mortgage or the debt is only paid off when you pass away, so it's taken out of your estate. But by then, the interest rates are built up, and you get this thing called compound interest. So your debt can actually grow exponentially. So you might only borrow $100,000, you then live for say 10 years or whatever, and then you find the debt has grown exponentially. It could be 200,000 or more coming out of your estate. So it does mean less inheritance for your beneficiaries. Reverse mortgages often come with higher fees, and they may impact the pension. So there's a lot of downsides to them, and people really need to consider them fairly carefully. So it does sound like a lot of free money up front. I guess if you don't care much about your dependents or those who are going to benefit from you when you pass away, then it's maybe not much of an issue. But if you are a bit concerned about that, you need to look into it more closely. There's other alternatives out there. One of them, in fact, ASIC is referring to the pension loan scheme, where you get a boost to your pension.
What's that?
And then,
what's that?
Well, I didn't really know of it till I saw it in an article. That is basically a situation where you can boost your pension payments, and then the extra money is taken out of your inheritance at some point. There's other products offered by various fund managers out there which might give you flexibility to spend more in retirement, but they don't necessarily rely on the house. They assume that you have some superannuation. So we find typically in Australia that a lot of people retire, they've got a reasonable balance. It might be, say, 200,000 or something in their super, but they're worried that it's going to run out. And so you can buy various products which will, well, obviously the traditional one is an annuity. They tend to be somewhat costly. There's other products which effectively you buy, and then it provides you a guaranteed payment for lifetime. It's like almost like a reverse insurance sort of thing. So that's also, those other products are also worth considering. And once you get that product, you can then have confidence to spend in retirement. But that, of course, assumes that you have a decent balance up front in your super.
Okay. Yeah. So how does it affect your pension then? If you've got a house that you bought for $800,000 that's now worth $3 million, and you've only got $200,000 on your mortgage left to go, is it a good idea?
It does have some benefits. The problem with the situation in Australia is that the family home is not included in the pension asset test. I'm not an expert in this area, but that's my understanding. Therefore, people, if they sell the family home and then put some of that money in the bank, then the Centrelink will want to know about that. And if you go through various thresholds, you'll then find that your pension is reduced. And so in that sense, a lot of people just don't want to sell the family home.
No.
They'd rather keep that as it is and maximise the pension that they get. And therefore, they also maximise the inheritance for their beneficiaries. Of course, the reverse mortgage is effectively, taking money out on the house and leads to a higher cash flow for the person, and then that can affect the pension. And that's the downside to it. So that's where you've got to be a little bit careful, that your pension can be impacted by this. And so therefore you can have high fees, you're paying relatively high interest on this, it compounds over time. And at the same time, you might end up with a lower pension.
All right. So a bit to think about. And there are plenty of products out there, but really do your homework and make sure it's worth it.
That's certainly the case. You've got to do a lot of homework here. I could say, well, go get a financial planner and see what they think. But obviously that will cost a fee up front as well. So there are lots of options out there. The reverse mortgage is not the only one. And if you do go down the reverse mortgage path, make sure you shop around. This is an area which is still growing, and it's perhaps not quite as competitive as traditional mortgages. And so that's why you often find the mortgage rates being charged are quite high, and the fees, the establishment fees for the reverse mortgage are also quite high compared to what you'd pay with a traditional mortgage.
Shane Oliver, the Defence Minister Richard Marles, this week or last week unveiled the latest National Defence Strategy. And basically, it's a 10-year investment plan, and he's declared greater private sector involving defence and defence spending. Now, the superannuation sector here in Australia is worth $4.5 trillion. And now there's a push for more defence spending off budget. And some analysts are accusing Labor of using accounting tricks to help fund a $53 billion military build-up. Now, I know you don't get political, so if you can keep your economist hat on, is spending $53 billion on defence wise spending? Do we need it? Is it money well spent? There are plenty of critics of AUKUS saying the commitment we've jumped into, the submarines, for example, will be out of date by the time we get them. But that's the same with any technology. Is a $53 billion spend on defence over 10 years, is that good economics?
I guess at a high level, it depends on your perspective. I mean, many people would say that defence spending is just a waste of money. There's lots of things we should actually be doing. I've seen estimates, in fact, on Channel 7 Sunrise, had one the last week or so. The war in Iran is costing the US about $1 billion a day, or close to $1 billion a day. So massive cost. And those machines, I mean, apparently when they rescued that airman who was shot down over Iran, they ended up leaving behind a $300 million plane, I think. So they had to blow it up. These things cost a lot of money, and there's also this argument increasingly that defence these days ain't what it used to be. You think of the US as incredibly well armed, but in Iran, you could say to some degree, well, maybe Iran's got the better of them by using drones and attacking neighbouring allied countries of the US in the Gulf. Drones are far less costly, and you can see examples of this in the war in Ukraine, that warfare these days is very, very different. It's often done by drones, which can be a lot cheaper to operate than traditional money you spend your defence on. I guess the bigger issue is, well, there's two issues here. One is the US is saying, well, well, we've been spending more on defence over the years. All of our allies, or most of our allies, not all of them, haven't been spending the same amount. The target's usually around 3% of GDP. We're well below that. I think we're around 2%. We're increasing it a little bit, but a long way from what the US would want us to be doing. I'm not saying that we should necessarily do what the US wants, but I mean, maybe they have a point. If they're spending more and we're spending less, maybe that's not fair. So we should be increasing it over time to match the same level. The other issue is that the world is becoming a more risky place. We've seen that progressively in recent times. You can allocate blame to China or Russia, or alternatively, you can say, well, maybe Trump is part of it himself. He's contributing to the riskiness of it because he's done various things in Venezuela and Iran, and those are the sort of things that often trigger world wars. But whatever way you look at it, the world has become a more risky place. Countries are resorting to nationalism or populist leaders, and that's a situation which often leads to global conflict, and we're not necessarily immune to that, and therefore we should be spending more on defence. So my view is, yes, we probably should be spending more on defence. The question is, I think, whether that money is well allocated given the changing nature of wars these days, making sure that I do worry, like you just mentioned there with AUKUS. You know, we spend all this money on submarines that we get in a few decades' time, assuming it all works to plan. And by the time we get there, those things are out of date. That is a big risk. And the argument is maybe you should go for much nimbler, cheaper things that are more up to date. And you don't necessarily, there's this other argument with AUKUS that it's about projecting power. Does Australia really need to operate submarines on the other side of the world? Because that's what you get when you get a nuclear powered submarine. Do we really need to do that sort of thing? And there's a lot of debate around that. So I do wonder whether the sort of thing we're spending the money on is the right thing. But as a general principle, if the world has become more geopolitically risky, then yes, we should be spending more on defence. Yes, we should be finding more ways for the private sector to get involved, because I think to get up to the US government's objective, 3% of GDP, it's going to cost us about $34 billion or something. It's a massive amount, massive extra spend, and that takes money away from other spending, or alternatively means that taxpayers have to pay more, or we go more into debt. And we all know that our public debt levels have gone up a lot compared to what they used to be. There's a whole bunch of issues around that. One way around that is to get more private sector involvement along the way. So that certainly makes sense.
Now, the Prime Minister has flown back from overseas because of the oil refinery explosion fire in Geelong, the Avita.
I thought he went overseas to get some oil. Now he's come back.
He's burnt off. I've tried to do some maths. He's burnt off about 300,000 litres of jet fuel to go overseas to shore up an oil deal, a fuel deal. And at the same time, $20 million spent on a how to save fuel campaign, basically telling us to take our roof racks off and to pump up our tyres.
If you polish your car?
If you polish your car, it will be more efficient because it'll be sleeker. Exactly, polish your car and take your roof racks off. I just think
does that make much difference, really?
Well, we needed the education. Apparently, they couldn't make it in a statement. They had to spend $20 million on a national campaign. However, we now realise how vulnerable we are. We've been vulnerable for a long, long time. We're girt by salt water, so any oil that comes to Australia has to get here by a tanker, and so we're in trouble. Now, the IEA stipulated, we're a member of the International Energy Agency, says you've got to have 90 days. We never have, and we never probably will. In fact,
we did many years ago.
I don't know if we did. I think we've only ever had between 30 and 35, but you're the expert. But we haven't for a long time.
I know it's 30 to 35 now.
Yeah.
I mean, many years ago, we had lots of things. When I was in my 20s, we were oil self-sufficient, and we refined all our oil. And some years, we were a net exporter of oil in the 1980s.
Can we afford to be self-sufficient again? I mean, the building of refineries, we're down to, one. We're down to one.
Bits of it apparently is still operating.
Bits are still going. So we're down to 1.5. We'll go 1.5. We used to have 8 20 years ago. And both sides of government have decided it's too expensive to explore, to drill, to build, and to maintain refineries. I mean, there's no way in the world the government's going to go to a union and say, we'd like to refine our own oil, do it all here in Australia. Can you take a cut in wages? No one's going to do that. Kind of like why we had to say goodbye to a car industry. We just couldn't compete. So we import oil, and we refine some of it here, some of it comes over here, the finished product. Can we afford to be self-sufficient again, Shane Oliver, or would we be paying somewhere between $6 and $8 a litre for the petrol and the fuel and the diesel that we make here? Or would the government subsidise that, like they're subsidising renewables? Can we afford to be self-sufficient?
I think we can, and the extra cost would be more like 6 to 8 cents a litre, not $6 to $8 a litre. Firstly, there's plenty of oil around Australia. My understanding is there's 200 to 250 million barrels of oil off the northwest coast, not that far out, that we could easily tap. The main reason we haven't done it, I think, is partly for environmental reasons. So the oil is there. It's just that we haven't explored for it. So I think we can get ourselves up to speed with more domestic supply of oil. The extra refining costs, yes, it's going to cost more money. Wages in Australia are higher. That's why a lot of the refineries shut down.
Well, we enjoy a standard of living, and no one's going to compromise that.
No, they aren't. And then if we run out of the oil before we're fully electrified, then that standard of living will be compromised. It will actually go down, and that risk is still high. Right now, I know that Trump and Iran saying they're talking, or Trump says there's very good prospects.
That's today. By the time this episode drops, it could be all shit again. You know
it
that.
It could be all totally different. What I was trying to say, though, is that they've been talking for the last couple of weeks. Whereas if you look at the flow of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, it used to be up here like 150 a day. Now it's down. It's off the screen sort of thing. It's down the bottom. 10 ships, 20 ships, nothing compared to what it used to be. And the longer that goes on, the greater the risk that we will run into a situation where we do actually have to have petrol rationing. This is just the reality, because the last ship that left the Strait of Hormuz on the 28th of February has now reached its destination. So if you look at the fuel coming out of Asian refineries, it's hardly fallen. They're still operating on the ships that came out over the last 6 weeks ago. That is now going to come to an end unless the Strait quickly reopens, and therefore they won't have any fuel to send to Australia unless we get the Strait open pretty quickly. Therefore, we hit crunch time. That will come at a huge cost to Australians and their living standards and GDP and all these sorts of things. My view is that the cost of getting the oil out, it wouldn't be that exorbitant and would probably cover itself. So I wouldn't see a major problem there. Yes, the refineries would cost more to refine in Australia, but you're only talking about 6 to 8 cents. I mean, I haven't done a comparison of how much it costs to refine in Viva and the Ampol Petroleum refinery in Queensland, I think
Queensland,
it is.
Yep.
But it's not massive. It's not huge. Government could cover it, or I don't know. I think Australians would probably put up with it if it gives you energy security and you're paying 6 to 8 cents a litre more. So I think it is something that Australia needs to look at very closely. We have talked in recent years about Future Made in Australia, FMIA, I think it's called. Government policy that came out a couple of years ago, but it was focused on things like critical minerals, fair enough, but also solar panels. And I thought that one's a bit dubious. I don't know that solar panels are critical if we go into a time of crisis. Maybe a longer term, yes, but if we don't have the expertise in solar panels, then maybe we shouldn't do that. But this is one that we definitely do need. And over time, you could argue electrification will solve it. There's going to be a lot of people who are sitting on the fence and they're saying, I'm going to go out and get an electric vehicle. But that's over time. That will take a long time to fully roll through to the point that you don't need oil and petrol anymore. My feeling is, yes, the government should look at these things. There's another aspect to it. Even if we all go fully electric, you're still going to need oil for things like plastics and fertilizer and all that sort of stuff. We're probably okay on fertilizer because we could get the gas, but to do that sort of stuff and to transfer it into a product that we can use, I think there is a strong argument it should be refined in Australia, and Future Made in Australia could arguably be better allocated towards that sort of end rather than things like solar panels.
Well, okay, that's interesting because of the wages and the infrastructure that will have to be catered to in order to...
Well, here's a funny number for you. I regularly track the global petrol price in Australian dollar terms because that's what's relevant, and I compare it to the petrol price. Since the refineries started closing down 15 years ago, 12 years ago, the gap between them has widened to a substantial degree. So margins have actually increased. For refinery margins have actually increased dramatically. We haven't... Okay. I don't think we've seen much of a saving by getting the fuel out of Asia. I mean, the refineries might argue with that, so they haven't, but the margins have actually widened.
Why would the Prime cut short his trip to Malaysia because of this catching on fire? If there was not a big problem, why would he cut short that trip? Is there more to this than meets the eye, or just...
I don't think there's any logic to cutting short the trip because of the fire. I mean, there's nothing much you can do about it anyway. You can, whatever you can do, you can do it.
What's he got, a better hose?
Yeah, that's right. I'm wondering, it's only, to me, the key issue is how much capacity has been reduced as a result of this, and how long will it take to get back on board, to start flowing again? That's not something the Prime Minister can solve by coming back to Australia. So I don't quite get the logic of that, why he's come back.
I couldn't work. I think there's more to it. Yeah,
I also get a little bit confused about that refinery thing generally, because it's the sort of thing back in my mind. I thought, we've only got 2 left, and what if there's a problem with one of them? And sure enough, I get up yesterday morning and there's a problem with one of them. I thought, oh, here we go. That's not good news. But don't forget that the problem globally is not necessarily a shortage of refined fuel. It's a shortage of crude. And so you could argue that, we've got crude coming into Australia that goes to those refineries. If the refinery can't refine it, we could send that crude. I know it costs money. You can send that crude to Asia and get it refined over there and then get it back again, because presumably it was already crude oil. So I know that costs money, but it shouldn't necessarily result in a major, major lasting problem.
Jackie Lambie has made headlines again, Shane Oliver. These public servants, the top earning public servants, are on certainly good coin. If you pay peanuts, do you get monkeys? Should public servant wages be capped? Good thing or not, from an economist point of view, Shane Oliver?
From an economist's point of view, I'd say it'd be a bad thing. I mean, it's the sort of thing that populist politicians wheel out all the time because it goes down well with their base. They think, how can it be justified that someone gets paid $1 million? The problem is, I guess, that we have a free market economy. A bit like with radio stars, with Kyle and Jackie O, like the $200 million contract.
No, but they weren't worth it. And
I don't listen. I never listened to.
No, of course you didn't. Of course you didn't. You're intelligent, but they weren't worth it. ARN knew that, and so this is why we have a shit fight. ARN couldn't wait to get out of that contract, but what happens in court could cost them a lot more. I don't know, but they weren't worth it. Are these top level public servants worth it? Are they making Australia better? Now, let me tell you something. Having lived in Canberra, I did drive on 2CC for a while, and I got to know you live in a bubble in Canberra. And only journalists who live in Canberra and visit Parliament House regularly will tell you that the way to get to a politician is through the staff, unless you know someone firsthand. But you still got to talk to their media people. You still got to talk to their chief of staff. And these top-level public servants wield a hell of a lot of power. And the lobbyists know it. If you want a politician to write legislation sympathetic to your cause, you don't go straight to the Prime Minister. You go through the senior public servants. Now, for example, Peter Credlin held enormous power when she was Tony Abbott's chief of staff. Enormous power. So, and she's not on her Pat Malone. And I'll tell you what, I'd love to chat with Peter Credlin on this podcast. I think she's a very interesting woman. But the lobbyists go through these public servants, and you've watched Yes Minister, it's not a lie. Do they make the country better? Are they worth salaries over $1 million a year when the Prime Minister himself is on $622,000?
I don't know whether the individual public servants do or do not. All I know is that they could leave those roles, which, as you say, are very, very senior roles, lots of responsibility. They could easily leave those roles and go into the private sector and get multiples of that.
But they'd have to get results. In the private sector, if they're on a board, if Macquarie Bank, for example, now if you become a senior executive at Macquarie Bank and you're on over $1 million a year, you're going to reach KPIs. You've got to get results. You've got to perform.
There's no doubt about that.
You don't get those wages and those bonuses for nothing.
But this is the problem with if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. If you cap those salaries, say 400,000 or whatever, you would end up with a lower quality of public servants at the top level because they would get to the cap mid-level public servants or senior, they'd be senior, and then they would say, look, I'm doing pretty well here. I know my stuff. I can go and work for NAB or whoever and get paid a lot more. And that's what would happen. And we'd get a lower quality of public servants at the top level there. So I'm not a great fan of capping it. And I also wonder whether, politicians, a lot of people hate them. It's probably easier for me to hate on them in this program, but I kind of wonder whether they should actually be paid more. The Prime Minister has huge responsibilities. They give up a lot in some ways. They gain a lot in other ways, but you have to relocate to Canberra for big chunks of the year. You're away from your family. It is a really, really tough gig. And that's one of the reasons you can make an argument that you're getting a lower quality of people coming through wanting to be politicians compared to, say, 30, 40 years ago, because they say, well, it's just too tough now. I don't want to do it if all I'm going to get paid is I get to be PM, all I get paid is $600,000. You get paid a lot more out there in the private sector. If you compare the situation in developed countries where public servants get paid decent salaries compared to less developed countries, you find that the level of corruption and bribery in countries like Australia is a fraction of what it is. It's almost non-existent compared to the situation in lower income countries where public servants don't get paid enough, and therefore try and seek income elsewhere via the bribes. So it is a very strong argument you do that. I think the sort of public servants you're referring to here, like head of departments, may not be necessarily in that situation. But obviously, if you go further down the line, then the risk of bribery would increase because the potential for them to let something through for a bribe would be higher.
Shane Oliver, coming into the May budget, are you optimistic?
I think the government has got the message that there is an issue with too much government spending in Australia. Some of that spending is not wise, particularly NDIS, and some of that spending, as you say, is contributing to inflation. I think it's a major factor. And I think they've also got the message that they do need to do more to make it easier for businesses to start up, to do things, supply more homes, and likewise. In other words, we've got to grow the productive capacity of the economy. We also need the government sector to wind down a little bit, get out of the way, make more room for the private sector if we want to see our living standards rise. I think the government has got that message. The problem is that we've now got another crisis. There is an old saying, never waste a good crisis. You should always use a crisis to put through reforms we need to do. I think Keating and Howard often did that sort of thing, whereas in recent years we haven't had that to the same degree. Now I'm a little worried that the crisis has come along. The government got the message as to what they need to do, cut government spending, boost productivity, but that might be blunted by the crisis as the government goes down a populist route, which is more focused on providing payments to households to make it look like they're protecting Australians. And there's no doubt that does help protect. As a motorist, I like the idea of cutting fuel excise. As an economist, I thought it was totally stupid. There are better ways to do it, but there is an argument there for government to protect households, but if we keep doing this, we have one crisis after the other. It leads to higher and higher levels of government spending getting locked in. Yes, we may protect Australians in the short term, but longer term, we will relegate ourselves to lower living standards. So I'm a little bit less optimistic than I was. The more I've seen, the reports I've seen coming out of Canberra is there's more focus on short-term payments, cost of living sort of support, as opposed to longer-term structural reforms. And the reason I got worried is that if you're going to do anything, it's this budget. This is the first budget after last year's election. There's 2 years or to go to the next election. So if you're going to take tough decisions, get the NDIS under control, for example, now is the time to do it, because we know that next year the focus is going to be back on the coming election for 2028.
Shane Oliver, good to talk to you, mate. Thank you so much. Nice to see you dressed up for us today. Just stand up and show everyone your T-shirt.
Not my Grateful Dead T-shirt. I got this in Haight-Ashbury. You know that the intersection of Haight and Ashbury, there's a tie-dye T-shirt shop. If you go up the road a little bit, is it Ashbury? You come to the Dead House. This is where the Grateful Dead live.
Well, we've got Anzac Day just around the corner, and my regular listeners will know I'm an ambassador and proud to be an ambassador of a charity called Wounded Heroes, where we raise money and we look after people who have served overseas for their country with the ADF and get back to Australia and aren't treated as well as they should be and are suffering things like post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health issues. And what Wounded Heroes does is we house people. We put people into emergency accommodation. We buy groceries. It's a very grassroots charity. It is absolutely non-for-profit. Martin Shaw's the president, and I've been an ambassador for Wounded Heroes for quite some time. So if you look up woundedheroes.org and coming into Anzac Day, if you are affected or you know of somebody who's been affected by serving our country overseas that needs a little bit of help, please contact us because we're there to help. Which brings me to my next guest. I have known Lyle Ariel for, I'm tipping, 35 years. Close on, anyway. I first met Lyle Ariel in 1984 when I moved to Bathurst from Young. And Lyle was a newcomer on Bathurst City Council and a member of the Labor Party. He was a Labor councillor. I'm going to get to Lyle's story in just a second, but Lyle is not only a passionate train person, station master, and loves trains, loves Ben Chifley, loves the history behind Australia's railroad journey, but Lyle also served in Vietnam. Now, Lyle wasn't a conscript. He actually joined the army. So I guess that makes him general infantry. And his time spent in Vietnam changed his life forever. In good ways, in great ways, but sometimes I'm sure he thinks about what he had to do and what he saw in Vietnam, and it probably keeps him awake sometimes. I regard Lyle Ariel as a genuine great human. Politically, we may not get on, but by golly, his principles are second to none. And I'm going to get to that in just a second because it's a fascinating story. And I feel bad that I haven't seen him in too many years, but we have spoken on the phone from time to time. He's married to a wonderful woman called Coral and has beautiful children and grandchildren now, and I suspect probably great-grandchildren. I don't want to make him older than he is, but there's a fair bit to this bloke. He has a fascinating story to tell, and I'm so glad he can join us in the lead-up to Anzac Day. Lyle Ariel, former councillor Lyle Ariel, welcome to the Bonafide podcast, brother.
Thanks very much, Luke. It's lovely to be here.
Gee, we got up to some stuff back in the day, didn't we?
We did. It was a wonderful time, mate. Wonderful time in our lives.
And, you know, you and I got on really, really well. And I loved your family. I've been to your house for dinner. I've had too many bourbons with you over the years. I've been to many, many Bathurst City. It's now Bathurst Regional Council because they merged with Evonshire Council, but it was Bathurst City Council back in the day. And you were on that council and served very, very proudly. And you had to make one decision in particular that changed your life forever, and I'm going to get to that. But your time in Vietnam, you've told me a little bit about your time in Vietnam, and I will say this, it was after you had been lubricated, sitting around my fire bucket, playing the guitar and singing Elvis songs, but you did open up a little bit. But as I say, only when you felt like it and only after a few Jack Daniels. But I was thinking of you, Lyle, with Anzac Day coming up because it means a lot to me. My grandfather fought in Villers-Bretonneux in World War I, and he went over as a private, came back as an acting Lance Corporal. And my grandfather was a window dresser at Macy's in San Francisco at one point. He played the violin with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. He was the organist at St Philip's Church there in York Street. Next thing you know, he's in trenches up to his chest in mud, and he's a Lewis gunner. And he came back. He survived, but he came back a broken man. And I've actually marched for Pop on Anzac Day with his medals, and it was the proudest day of my life. And Anzac Day means a hell of a lot to me, and I hope the spirit of Anzac Day continues. But this is not about me. This is about you. I want to start with why I think you're a man of enormous principle, just to set this up. And I don't want to embarrass you, Lyle, so just shut up and listen to me. In 1984, towards the end of 1984, we had a Labor government federally, and we had a Labor government in power in New South Wales. In Bathurst, we had a local Labor member in Mick Clough. We had a federal Labor member for Clare, David Simmons. And David Simmons was also the junior Minister for Defence under Kim Beazley at that point. The federal government decided they were going to acquire a fair bit of land along the Macquarie River just outside of Bathurst and acquire it as an army training base. And the farmers whose land was going to be acquired. This is very much like the Michael Caton movie, The Castle. A lot of those farmers said, look, it's not the best farming country. It's goat country. It's mountainous. It's steep, but it's our farm. It's my farm. It was my dad's farm. It was my grandfather's farm. And I'm sorry, I don't want it taken away from me. Now, there was a huge push to have this army base established in Bathurst. But you as a councillor spoke to these farmers and you heard what they had to say and you were opposed to that army base and the ADF acquiring that land. Now, coinciding with all of this, there was a mayoral election. The sitting mayor of Bathurst was a Labor mayor, Max Hanrahan, and there was a mayoral election. And you, being a devout member of the Labor Party, huge fan of Ben Chifley and everything that the Labor Party had to stand for, the Light on the Hill dinner at Charles Sturt University, which was then Mitchell College, you embraced all of the Labor Party ideals, but you couldn't, in your conscience, vote for the Labor mayor, Max Hanrahan, because of this acquisition of land, compulsory acquisition of land along the Macquarie River. And so you didn't vote for Max Hanrahan. It was then a draw. And from a teapot, they drew the name Bruce Boland, who was a Liberal member on council and ended up being a very bloody good mayor, if you ask me. But you were then expelled from the Labor Party. Expelled. It must have seemed at the time a heartbreaking experience. But you did what you did because of your principles, no matter what the consequences. And you suffered those consequences, and to this day. But you went with your conscience and your heart. I think you are to be admired. And I've told you this in the past, but I'm saying it now on the podcast, Lyle. I hold you in extremely high regard because you stuck by your principles. How am I going?
Luke, you're spot on right, mate. That is how I felt in those days. The army base was never, ever coming to Bathurst. We flew across to Singleton. As I spoke to a senior officer over there, no names, no pack drill. He informed me that we would have been on the receiving end of the artillery range and Orange would have got the base. So that was another thing that put me against the base, the artillery range coming to Bathurst. But it wasn't an easy decision, but it was a decision I had to make. It was a decision that I felt that I could not vote for either mayor, and I didn't. I
spoke to David Simmons. I used to speak to both our local members once a week. You'd remember that. And I used to speak to the mayor of the day. It didn't matter who they were. We had a Liberal state member at one point in David Berry, a local publican. I spoke to him when he came to power for the seat of Bathurst. He was only there, I think, 12 months. But I was in touch with the local community. Would you agree?
Yes, mate, absolutely.
And I said to David Simmons, I said, don't you admire Lyle sticking by his principles and doing what he did? He said, no. He said, if you get onto council or get into Parliament as a Labor Party member, you're backed by that party and you are expected to toe the party line. That's what he said to me. He wasn't about to forgive you.
No, true. And nor he should. But that was my decision, not his.
It was, as Sir Humphrey Appleby in Yes Minister would have said, it was enormously politically courageous. Were you banned for life?
I was expelled from the Labor Party for life, yeah. They could do what they wanted to do, but they couldn't tell me how to vote.
Have you applied to rejoin the ALP?
No, I have not, and I will not.
Do you still vote Labor?
From time to time, mate, I'll decide on the time.
Yeah.
What the party presently, I couldn't vote Labor with Albanese there.
Okay. I just wanted to set this chat up by explaining to people why I hold you in such high regard, because it was incredibly courageous and heartbreaking, the results, but you did it because in all consciousness, you couldn't allow the army to acquire compulsorily that land from those farmers.
That is correct.
Wow. I want to now, by giving a little bit of that background, I want to talk to you about your time in Vietnam. Now,
yes, Luke.
And how that led to you meeting the love of your life, Coral. How old were you when you joined the army?
19, Luke.
Oh, it's like a Red Gum song.
Yes, when I got just about ready to get out of the army after 3 years, the government of Queensland wrote to me and said, why didn't I apply for the conscription? And I took it to my superior officer, and he said, just ignore it.
What rank were you?
I was private.
Okay.
I refused rank because I didn't want initially to become infantry. I wanted to come out with a trade, and I applied for RAMI. And when I went up to get my corps, they said infantry. I said infantry. I said I've done very well here. I said why infantry? And they told me that they can't have a fit bloke like me in RAMI when there's a war on, which is fair enough.
So as a private, and you are a member of the ADF, you weren't conscripted, you were sent to Vietnam.
Yep.
What year?
1968, late 1968 to late 1969. We did about 13 months, I did, before I come back to Australia. And I was in the infantry, and we were in the bush most of the time. We weren't back at base.
What did you know about the Vietnam conflict before you left?
Oh, just that it was the coming down, the communism coming down the world to eventually get to Australia. And that's what I was told, and that's what I believed. And I was a bit stupid in those days. I believed a lot of things people told me. But we know it wasn't true because they didn't have the ability to get past South Vietnam.
So in your heart of hearts, you believed you were fighting communism, but on a
absolutely,
but on a more northern border.
Absolutely, Luke. Better to fight it up there than fight it in Australia.
Yeah, no, I understand. So when you landed in Vietnam, what happened?
Luke, we went over on the HMAS Sydney. It was an aircraft carrier that was converted to a troop carrier. And when we landed on the beach at Vung Tau, we expected to be in immediate war and fighting. But children were there to welcome us, and they were all playing and having a good time. And so it wasn't what we expected.
Yeah.
We had to go to the jungle probably a week and a half, 2 weeks later, to find the enemy.
So we all know Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City, is in the south, and you were fighting the Viet Cong, which were from the north, heavily backed by China and Russia. Australia was there really backing up the US. Did you go over there feeling as though you could catch bullets in your teeth and yet you were bulletproof? Did you think it was going to be just a walk in the park?
Luke, in those days I went over there thinking that I wouldn't come back. So I didn't probably do the things that I should have done as far as hitting the ground and staying on the ground during a firefight. I put my heart into it and fought as best I could. I had a lot of good troops with me that were covering my backside as well as I was covering theirs.
Wow. And you didn't think you'd come back?
No, Luke, I joined the 9th Battalion, which was just being formed in Adelaide. It was a Queensland battalion, but they formed us up in Adelaide, and we spent a year there. We did jungle training in the Coltana Desert and the Flinders Ranges, and that was actually beneficial to us because in Vietnam, in the jungle, we could imagine where our other companies were if we got into trouble. Of course, on the Flinders Ranges and the Coltana Desert, you could see the other companies. You can't in the jungle. So it was pretty beneficial to do that.
Who did your superiors report to? Were they under American command, or was it completely Australian command?
As I understand, it was completely Australian command. We fought differently than the Americans did.
How? Tell me how.
Well, the Americans went in major force all the time. We often, well, not often, nearly all the time, went into the bush in platoon strength. It's split up. So most of the time a platoon was fighting in their area and our other platoons were spread out. Of course, we could always rely on our other platoons to come to our aid if we got into heavy conflict, and which we did during the Battle of Half Peg. We got into very heavy contact. My platoon sergeant, F. Duro, was a lovely man, and he died in our first contact, but he went right through the Battle of Long Tan.
Wow.
So It was just a shame for him. But that's the way he was. He stepped out from behind a tree and got shot through the head. And I was a platoon medic at the time. I did my training in Adelaide in the St John's ambulances. And we went to Vietnam as a platoon medic, which is still not medical corps. It was infantry corps. I tried to patch Jeff up, but I knew he was going to die.
Jesus. You know, for people like me who have never seen conflict, I didn't even do cadets at school. It's hard to understand. And the Viet Cong, and just remember, the people of Vietnam had been under foreign rule or invasion for many, many years. Many, many years. And the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese in particular, the Viet Cong, were very, very cunning. And just bear in mind, there was no air, they didn't have an air force. But they knew the jungle. They knew guerrilla warfare like no one else except the Australians.
I agree with you entirely. They knew the guerrilla warfare in the jungles very, very well. And, you know, we had our backs up to fight them. But we won every battle. But we lost the war because the people of Australia lost the war, not us.
Yeah, and the Americans left.
Yes, absolutely.
They fled Saigon and left a lot of women and half American babies behind.
Yeah.
It's just a tragic, and you can see it all. It's all documented. Just go to YouTube and look at the fall of Saigon, and you'll see the pictures. Helicopters landing on the embassy roof.
That's right. Yeah.
It is, and I've been there. I love Vietnam. By the way, it's the most capitalist communist country I think I've ever been to.
Yeah, Luke, as I say, we wasted our time because they're still living the same lifestyle as they were, because the communists realised that capitalism is the way to go as far as getting the country rich, and they do it very well.
I want to get back to the jungle warfare. I'll tell you a quick story. There's a bloke that even though he's passed away now, he died nearly 99 years of age, Uncle Ken, and his son Pete and I are best mates. We're like brothers. Uncle Ken was fighting in World War II in New Guinea, and he happened to be a crack shot, and he was employed as a sniper. He was awarded medals that you wouldn't believe, and was part of helping train the Australians and members of the elite SASR, which was the Special Air Service Regiment.
Yep.
He taught them to put holes in your boots so that the water could drain.
Yep.
He said, don't carry 60 kilo packs. Avoid using your radios. Use hand signals. Your job is to allow the rest of the company to know where the enemy is situated. But they fought mostly with knives and hand to hand because they didn't want to make noise.
Unbelievable.
It's just unbelievable. And the Americans absolutely won, in awe of the Australians, but terrified by them. They were they called them phantoms in the night. They would slip away and come back a week later with all the intelligence they needed and unbelievable kill rates under their belts, often without firing a weapon. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, Luke, it is. They were very, very brave men. Very brave men.
And a lot of the time, the Viet Cong were using women and children. They had to do something. They were completely outnumbered. Those Coochie tunnels, which had been around since the French beforehand, they used them with unbelievable intelligence. The booby traps. And at this point, Australia and the Americans were fighting under the laws of the Geneva Convention. And now we have the Discipline Act of 1982, which defines all the rules of combat.
Right.
What rules were there?
Luke, we have normal rules of war. You don't shoot a prisoner. You don't leave yourself open to be shot yourself. When we surrendered a village, we would have aircraft fly over and have everyone go to a compound.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those people that couldn't get out of bed or were too sick, they let the village heads know they can't get to a compound, and the house was marked. So we didn't walk in and start firing. We got trapped up because, our rules of war, at least my rules of war, was fire first, fire fast, and fire accurately. So when I looked through the window of a house that was vacant, and I knew it was vacant, or supposed to be, I saw a soldier in there with a rifle. So I fired through the window. And unfortunately, I shot myself because I was looking at myself in the mirror.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. Vietnam was different to Afghanistan. When we went into the jungle, anyone in that jungle was enemy. You don't see a weapon. You don't have to. That's life and that's death. But in Afghanistan, I believe the village that these atrocities are supposed to have happened, I don't know whether they did. That was a village for the enemy. The enemy lived there. And every one of them, there was no civilians, they were all enemy. And that's what I understand from a senior man that was in Afghanistan.
Do you regret going?
No, I don't. I would have liked to have come out with the trade from Ramey, but no, I don't, because as far as I'm concerned, we did good. We won every battle, and as we know from history, we lost the war. But we didn't lose the war. The war was lost in America and Australia.
I want to talk about that in a second, but just getting back to that, do you stay in touch with any of your comrades from Vietnam?
All of them.
And what does Anzac Day mean to you and those friends of yours?
It means, in a lot of cases, if you want to travel to the capital cities, getting together, or if not, you certainly contact your friends and have a talk to them. It's a very, very respectful day, and we treat it as that. Hopefully that never changes.
Do you march with your medals?
No, I'm 77 years old. That's not the excuse. The excuse is I can't anymore. I can't walk a long distance without having to sit down. I'm certainly with them, and I travel in a vehicle up to the march point.
I want to go back to something you just said, and you said the war was lost back home. Yep. I've spoken to many Vietnam vets, and they say, and conscripts and general infantry like yourself, both, and the way you guys were treated by the Australian public when you got home, and I can't speak for you, you can, was appalling. There was a huge anti-war movement throughout America and Australia, that it was seen as evil, that we had no business being there, that you were burning baby. I had one Vietnam soldier tell me on air, he said he was accused of being a baby murderer. And it was Anzac Day. He had his medals and his uniform on. He just finished marching, and he went to a pub to play two-up, and he was accused of being a baby murderer. How did you feel received by the Australian public and the Australian press when you got back?
Luke, when I got back to Australia, I was in civilian clothes, so it really never come up a lot. But when I went back I still had 6 months to do in the army. Mm-hmm. And we, by the way, come from Vietnam back to Queensland, our original, well, not our original, but certainly our meant-to-be base, where 9th Battalion was always a Queensland battalion. And whilst we started off in Adelaide, went to Vietnam, we come back to Queensland, to Enoggera. And the first day that I went back to work in Enoggera, we went to the pub in the afternoon, and it was a waterside workers' pub. And I was in uniform. And so, unfortunately, one of the wolfies thought he could fight and beat me, and he tried and he failed. But the point is, from that day on, you didn't wear a uniform anywhere unless you had to.
Because you felt intimidated?
Oh, we were intimidated. When I say that, not mentally myself, but certainly the people hated us. The people of Queensland hated us. That's come about by the demonstrations and things like that happened. When I got out of the army, I come straight to Bathurst to
wait. I want to get to that story. Stay there, because there's a really good love story coming up, folks. But when you were in Vietnam, did you come into contact or serve with conscripts?
Oh, yes. Well, we didn't know who were conscripts. We were all the same.
All right.
Half of my battalion were conscripts.
Did they have a different attitude to you as a professional soldier?
No, exactly the same. They were all gentlemen. Any conscript that had that sort of problem Probably didn't come into an infantry battalion because I never saw it. The conscripts were brilliant.
Now, while you're in Vietnam, there's a young girl living in Bathurst, and for a school project, I think, the girls were encouraged to write to soldiers in Vietnam as pen pals. That's just pen pals, to keep them company, give them news from home, give them something to read from home.
That is correct. That is correct.
And you got a letter from a young girl who lived in Bathurst, and her name was Coral. Coral Larnick, a young girl who was living in Bathurst. And do you remember the first letter?
Yes, mate. Yeah.
Did you keep it? Tell me you kept it.
Luke, we get letters in the bush we can't keep. We've got to bury them because if we get killed or captured, the enemy have got information on Coral for a start.
Mm-hmm. But
so
anyway,
we couldn't keep any letters.
It was a school letter writing project. And I guess these days everyone's online. You didn't meet online, you met through pen and paper. And it was a girl you didn't know, but she decided, did she draw your name from how did Coral pick Lila? How did she pick
Her
you?
letter arrived in Vietnam, Luke, and I got her letter. But it was addressed to no one in particular. Well, it was addressed to the 9th Battalion.
Okay.
And I wrote back to Coral, and we just continued to write.
How many letters do you reckon you exchanged in your time in Vietnam?
She would have wrote, I don't know, 3 or 4 letters a week, Luke.
Wow.
But I couldn't because I was in the jungle.
Yeah, you were doing something. You were a bit busy at the time. You had your hands full.
Very, very much so. But I wrote probably at least once a week.
Did you fall in love through that letter writing process?
I think I did, Luke. I loved that girl that was in Bathurst, and I was determined to see her. Whether it was the same for her, I don't know. But the letter writing process, she was a touch from home, and it's something that we didn't have over there.
So you arrived back to Australia. You've still got time to serve in the army, and you're in Brisbane, but you are fascinated by this anonymous young girl from Bathurst. She would have been 16 or 17?
She was 17, Luke.
Yeah.
Probably 18 at the time.
She was in year 11 going into year 12.
Yep.
See, I've got a good memory.
You have.
So you decide that you're going to get into a car, your beaten up car, and you're going to drive from Brisbane to Bathurst to see her for the first time. And you arrive unannounced. Take us through that.
Yes, Luke, I did arrive unannounced, and I arrived in the early hours of the morning, and I just parked my car outside and went to sleep in the car. But when she woke up, she came out, and it was lovely meeting her. And
she didn't know you were there?
She saw the car there. She knew I was coming down.
Okay.
And when she woke up, she saw the car there.
What street in Bathurst was it?
Daly Street.
I know.
Up near the hospital.
I know exactly where Daly Street. She lived in Daly Street with her mum and dad?
Yes.
So what time in the morning is it when she comes out?
I think about 7 o'clock, Luke. She was going to work at probably 8:30. So.
And she comes out to your car. What car was it?
Let me think.
Come on.
It was a Mark 1 Zephyr, I think.
Wow. Mark.
Yeah.
She comes out of her address in Daly Street, and there you are. You've had to sleep in the car, you get out, and you look at each other for the first time. Take me through that.
Well, I watched her coming out of the house, so I had a big look at her all the way, and she just looked beautiful. It was lovely, Luke. It was something that I didn't expect, and perhaps I did expect, but it was lovely.
Did you fall in love right there?
Oh, I think I was in love before that, Luke. I don't know that she was, but we certainly started our life together there.
The sparks flew. And did she invite you in for breakfast, or what happened? What happened?
I can't remember, Luke. I went inside, of course.
You met her parents? You met her parents?
Yes, I did meet her parents.
You shook her dad by the hand?
Yep.
And did he greet you warmly?
Oh, yes. There was no problems, no worries at all, Luke. It was lovely. And we just started our life there and continued on. I never went back to Queensland except for visits.
No, you're skimming over the bit. When did you ask her dad's permission to marry his beautiful daughter Coral?
Unfortunately, I didn't ask his her dad's permission. I asked her. And that happened probably, I don't know, a month or two later on, Luke, but after I was living there for quite a while. But I didn't ask her dad's permission, and that was a bone of contention.
I thought an old-fashioned bloke like you would have asked her dad's permission. So you asked her, where did you propose?
Mount Panorama.
Oh, you beauty. up the top near Skyline, up near Reed Park?
Up on the Skyline, mate.
Where the view is?
Yep.
You went on to have 3 beautiful girls. I've met all of them.
I did. And they had 12 grandchildren. Oh, sorry, they had 12 of my grandchildren.
Yeah.
Those grandchildren have had 3 great-grandchildren.
Unbelievable story, folks. I told you, it's a great yarn.
It's for me a lovely history. It is indeed.
As the late great Jim Killen would have said, if that's not a good yarn, there's something wrong with all of us.
Good on you, Luke.
Lyle, when Anzac Day rolls around, are you okay with it? Do you wake up do you lie awake at night about thinking about what went on in Vietnam, or are you over it? Do you talk to someone about it? I guess staying in touch with your comrades is a good thing.
Yes, it is, Luke. No, I don't think about Vietnam a hell of a lot. What I do think about is what Anzac Day means and how it means. You wear your medals and things like that. I've got to say, the arrest of Ben Robert Smith has taken a bit of a shine off Anzac Day for most of us. We feel for him.
We'll leave our comments on Ben Robert Smith there because it's before the courts now, and you understand.
Yes, it is.
And you understand, but a lot of people agree with you. It's divided the nation, and it will on the Anzac Day.
Absolutely. I don't know whether he's guilty or whether he's not guilty, but the whole point is it probably should have been found out before they give him the Victoria Cross.
Well, that's a very good question, and Tony Abbott asked that. How come it's waited 20 years? And where are the superiors, Ben Robert Smith's superiors, who that gave him more? Where are they?
Well, that's my bone of contention, is this bloke was a corporal. He's on the first rung of the ladder. And where's his sergeant? And where's the captain's major, and where's the major's colonel? They were all over them. Surely they would have known that 5 people were being murdered. Anyway, I can't say too much about it because it is before the courts. And if you're under orders, then that's it. You're exempt.
Lyle, it's so good to catch up, mate. And can you give beautiful Coral a hug and a kiss for me and your 3 girls and all those grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Most certainly will, Luke. Most certainly will. And it's a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. A pleasure.
Truckie Tuesday is up next, and it's all made possible thanks to GME, the Aussie experts in communication tech for over 65 years. 10-4 good buddies. Whether you're passing vital road info onto the convoy, calling out a hazard ahead, or telling old mate to get off Channel 40 because it ain't a bloody karaoke bar, GME's got the gear to keep your connection steady and crystal clear. Truckie Tuesday is straight ahead. We have a fleet of operators standing by ready to take your call.
Do we?
How many's in the fleet?
2.
That's a fleet?
Yeah.
That's
a convoy?
Exactly how many trucks do you need to have a convoy?
Oh, I don't know.
Like, we know it's a lot of trucks, but is there an amount? If I looked up convoy, how many trucks would it say?
Oh, Rod?
Rod would know. Rod Hannafy.
More than one. More than one. And you've got to say, of course, congratulations on the 100th episode, and thanks for letting me take part.
I was going to say that. Yeah, this is episode 100, and they said you'd never make it. It was a little idea that Kelsey and my son Jacob had. Actually, before I left the Triple M network, they said you should do something, because I often found it frustrating that with commercial radio, you're limited by time as to how long you can spend with an interesting guest and really get the full story. You're limited, 6 minutes, 7 minutes tops. And so it was something that I was thinking about. And then we finally decided to go ahead and buy the equipment and jump in pretty much the day I got punted from Triple M. So there you are. And Rod Hannafy, of course, our Truckie Tuesday is a vital part of this. I had no idea what went on in the trucking industry before I started at Triple M, and Rod approached me and said, listen, did you know that you have a lot of truckies that listen to you around Australia overnight? Not all truckies love country and western. They do like the classic rock that Triple M was playing. I had no idea. And so we started Truckie Tuesday, and Rod, it sort of went from there. You're in Melbourne. Good morning.
Good morning, mate. Good morning. Yes, and you've done well, mate. Look, there is still a market out there, unfortunately, and it's being a lot of those blokes that listened at night. And we do have overnight transport. So they're out there on their own in the middle of nowhere. It's something that, people have tried to cater to, but they're still out there doing it, mate, and some of them certainly miss that. So we hope that they've transferred over to the podcast and listen along as they travel now.
Well, if you look at the feedback, a lot of them have, and we'd love to get more. But look, this is your program. Give us a call. Say good day. What's going on in your world? We've got some interesting breaking news that came out of the Fair Work Commission yesterday. I'll get to that in a sec. But I've really got to say hello and good morning to GME, the Aussie experts in communication tech for over 65 years. They are now a really special partner of Truckie Tuesday. GME, you've been talking about these people for a while, Rod.
I certainly have, mate. They've supported me since I started the truck ride idea. Back in those days, they even made car radios, mate. But their expertise, so I had them for quite a while. But their expertise is in UHF radio. They also make marine ones. So if you need one for your boat, you've got to talk to GME about it, aerials, and all of those things to allow communication. And, of course, back in the day, we had CBs. Yeah. You only had a range of about 1 kilometre. UHF now, range of about 10 kilometres, depending on topography. Big word for this early in the morning. But, mate, they do a really good job in supplying sets that allow us to communicate on the road. Of course, we've even spoken of many caravanners now having radios in them. We've got Channel 18 is the caravan channel. Channel 40 is the road channel or the truckies channel. And then some people have their own sort of thing as they go along. So, mate, I've been promoting a thing with them called the Open Road, where I've got a sign on the back of the trailer that says the Open Road is an ideal place to open up. So they've been out there in sort of trying to promote communication and improving mental health. I believe there is another lady they've got involved doing the same sort of thing. So, no, GME have supported me for a while, mate, and I think their products are bloody terrific, and they can save lives if you use them on the road to communicate.
GME, great Australian manufacturer and now a vital partner of Truckie Tuesday. It's without our sponsors and our partners, we just couldn't do it. So, or just for me, it'd be an expensive hobby. But in order to keep Kelsey paid, this is what in order to help Kelsey feed herself and keep
poor struggling millennial
and keep the weather off her, put a roof over her head. Welcome aboard, and if you'd like to talk sponsorship, we'll certainly accommodate you.
Now, just quickly, Luke.
Yes.
So, first of all, Michael wants to say hi from Melbourne. Apparently, it's quite foggy in Melbourne. And Steve is also checking in, get this, from the Isle of Wight. And Steve has been a long-time supporter from day one. So, hello, Steve. Thank you. And also, Brett is here as well. Brett is also a long-time supporter. So, love you guys.
Thank you for getting in touch. We love you too.
And just quickly, Luke, because I don't think I've actually shown you this, but on the 100th episode, I am so excited to announce that we have at least some merchandise.
What?
I know. I don't.
Who paid for that?
Now, the audience will be able to see it. You will not be able to see it. I'll have to show you afterwards. But we finally have some T-shirts. Now, this is just the first run of these. I'm sure we'll do some more, trucky geared ones, but you guys have to let us know exactly what it is that you want. But we got some cool ones here. Look at this one. This is kind of like a rock T-shirt. You can't see it. We got these if you want Luke's really stupid face on the back of your T-shirts, hoodies, all that type of stuff. You guys have been asking for it for a while. So
how do they get hold of their merch?
you go to the website, I will have it.
You'll have it all organised later today. We did, Rod will vouch for this. Rod, you remember years ago we were giving away Triple M T-shirts willy-nilly, and the truckies that we gave them to said, thanks very much, but you're better off giving truckies caps because the T-shirts get soaked in sweat and dirt and grease and we have to change them. But he said the truckies were saying, we'll wear caps every day and we'll wear them around and we'll go into diners and we'll go into roadhouses and we'll be wearing our cap every day. So they thought we would get more publicity out of caps than T-shirts. I remember that.
Yeah, our truckie caps are still in the making. We do have some caps up now, but Rod and I are working on some special truckie caps because obviously I feel like truckie caps are like very particular. They're a certain style and they're, I don't know, you don't want a lame truckie cap.
No,
you know?
I think the truckies will wear any cap.
Well, Kylie says no nightshirts. They'll be on the next drop.
Okay. All right. We can do that. Rod, by the way, the number is 0291289311 if you want to ring through and say g'day. Tell us where you are, what are the road conditions, and what are some of the issues that you'd like to voice here on a live Truckie Tuesday. Now, Rod, I've just looked this up. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. This is the research from AI on the internet. A truck convoy generally consists of 2 or more trucks. So 2 or more is a convoy. And it says, although 3 is often deemed a better minimum for practical purposes, military convoys, a general rule of thumb for a military convoy is 30 to 35 vehicles. Large convoys.
There you go.
Okay, I'm just following through. Large convoys, special events or organised charity runs can involve huge numbers, such as the 65-truck surprise convoy or the 258-truck Burrumbuttock Hay Runners convoy. I remember talking to the organiser of that some years ago. So there you are. That's a convoy. Now, before we go into other issues, this is news from yesterday from the Fair Work Commission. And I'd like you to listen to this in case you haven't heard about it yet, because this is breaking news today. And I believe Channel 7 Sunrise will be covering this in more detail after 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this morning. Australia's largest retailers, manufacturers and mining companies will be forced to pay truck drivers more to compensate for spiralling fuel costs after the Fair Work Commission issued a landmark order that could add further pressure to inflation. And I'll get to that point in a second, but let me just continue. Truckies and their bosses, represented by the TWU and the Australian Road Transport Industrial Organisation, have been pleading for action after weeks of absorbing soaring diesel prices. Why? Well, they signed themselves to contracts well before the war broke out in the Middle East. And it's not just truckies. I mean, tradies have penciled in on their quotes a quote for a house or an extension or whatever without adding in the extra cost of fuel, particularly diesel. And so this is basically for the transport industry. As I said, it's the TWU. The Commission ruled that from Tuesday, companies at the top of the supply chain, and I don't know how you define that, will have to conduct fortnightly fuel price reviews and factor rising fuel prices into contracts that they've already signed up for. The order was handed down yesterday after a hastened legal process before the Commission, which was expedited after the Albanese government issued an emergency determination under the new laws that have been passed by Parliament in recent weeks. Now, getting back to inflation, Rod, what the economists today are saying, well, that's great, it seems fair, but now the price of things will also, the price of everything will go up, and that's going to add to inflation. I'm not an economist, but Rod, your reflection on this landmark ruling from the Fair Work Commission yesterday?
Mate, there are companies that already had in place a fuel levy. So, companies work for cart a load for this bloke today and another bloke tomorrow and, half a load here and there and that sort of thing. And they had a fuel levy in place so that when the customer rang up, they said, how much to do this? Here's the quote, but we have a fuel levy. So if the fuel price goes up, so will the quote to cover the cost of the fuel. Now, that's fine when you had a fuel levy. If you, as you say, had a contract with Fred and you said, righto, Fred, I'm going to deliver up so many tonnes of freight every month for you for the next 12 months. Here's the price. We've locked it in. I've got the job and away you go. But then the war came along and Fred, the transport company went to Fred and said, oh, by the way, Fred, there's a war. The fuel's gone up, mate. I've got to get reimbursed for that amount of money. And Fred said, no, mate, no, you've got a contract. You're stuck with it. You've got to wear it. Now, transport companies, we know, and I think the figures I read the other day were 1 in 12 have disappeared in the last couple of years because of market pressure, because of so many other factors. It is a small margin business, and people then were getting screwed, Luke. I even know of companies who were charging a fuel levy to their customer, but being a major contractor, weren't passing on to the people doing the work and owning the trucks. So they were, doing the wrong thing. There were people that were being screwed and people saying, we're going to walk away from the industry if people won't pay. Now they have a mechanism in place that they will get paid. Now, you talk about inflation. Inflation would have gone up anyway, and that's the war. That's not us as an industry. We're not gouging. We're simply asking for cost recovery. We need to be paid because the price of fuel has gone up, or in the future there's going to be no one to do it, Luke. So it's good for those that didn't have an option other than virtually to beg and say, you can see the fuel's gone up. It's not me. I'm not full of it. I've got to get cost recovery. And now there's a mechanism in place if people weren't doing the right thing to pass on that increase in fuel costs.
Okay. How will this affect, say, for example, your company?
We have a fuel levy. So, we were one of the ones that had it from before, and our customers are aware of it. It's simply there every time we do a job, because we do jobs for lots of different people. But yes, it's those who were locked in, had a contract perhaps for 12 months or more, and were then not getting an increase to cover the cost of the fuel. And it's been substantial, as we all know.
All right. So is it going to cost me, I'm not a truckie, but is it going to cost me to purchase things from the supermarket?
Mate, it was going to do that anyway. It's a cumulative effect. If everything in Australia only went on a truck once, there would be a slight increase in that fee because it's been on a truck once. Now, it might travel 1,000 kilometres on a truck. It might be grain coming out of central New South Wales. It could be anything at all. It goes somewhere to get manufactured. So there's one leg. Then it's got to be taken once it's manufactured to be distributed. There's another leg. Then when it goes from the distributor to the supermarket, there's another leg. Then if you get it delivered home because you bought a fridge or whatever, there's another leg. So each of those things will have a slightly increased component because of the cost of that fuel. Mate, most of the trains in Australia are diesel electric. Electricity does a marvellous job in your home, but of course, people with cars are saying that it's really good, let's plug them in, but the infrastructure is not there for that yet either. We've got so many factors to solve. Road safety, people being involved in accidents, and the industry does a magnificent job. The Australian road transport industry operates at world's best practice. We are efficient and we do a really good job. We're the only country in the world that runs triple road trains to improve that efficiency.
Yeah.
But we need a good road network, and, mate, those costs have to be passed on to the people that are buying the goods at the end of that chain.
Now, Roger here says AusPost Star Track contractors have been doing the fuel price contract thing for 10 years or so. And Dean says, I think most Australians would expect higher prices if the increase is a fuel excess to support the truck drivers.
Yeah.
Do you think the general public is that selfless?
No, well, it's not just that. The thing I don't, well, let's address that. But the other thing I don't understand, and I wish I had Shane Oliver or Scotty Phillips here now, I'm not an economist, but if the truck companies are going to be virtually reimbursed or be given some relief so that they can perform the contracts that they've signed before the war, which should bring the price of things down. Now, how is this going to add to inflation? If the price of goods on the supermarket shelves goes down because the trucking companies aren't being as crippled as they were, that should make the price of those items cheaper. Now, I was always understanding that inflation comes from too much spending. And if things are expensive, you're not going to spend as much, that's why the RBA puts interest rates up. It's to put pressure on spending, to stop spending and try and battle inflation. So I'm kind of lost.
What happens though, Luke, is every single thing goes up. And whilst you say people have, spending that they can narrow or thin, they need food. The farmers need diesel to be able to plant the crop that we can sell, that we can eat, that we can export. So every one of those factors, the tractor that drives out to sow the stuff, the header that comes on to carry it, the truck that takes it to the thing, the train that picks it all up and takes it to the port, every one of those will have a slightly increased component because of fuel, and eventually the end product, the price will go up. And it's not spending you can give up. People can sort of buy a cheaper product, and we know what happened with toilet paper, how that went berserk, even though most of it's made here. So you've still got to buy your toilet paper, but it might cost you an extra 2 cents a roll because of all of those factors along the chain. So they will increase inflation. Yeah. But again, it's not us putting prices up. It's us surviving to be able to deliver it to everyone.
Yeah, no, I understand. It is confusing, though. If you've got some thoughts, please get in touch with us, lukebonaradioguy@gmail.com, and you can talk. You can ring through 0291289311. Rod, some very serious accidents have happened on our roads recently, and one of them particularly close to you. Very, very sad, tragic. What's happened?
Mate, one of our drivers was killed in an accident last Friday. It's a tragedy when it happens to anybody. I'd only spent time with him in Melbourne that morning. He was on his way to get the truck washed and go home and have a week off. Mate, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I've heard lots of stories. The outcome, of course, is that he didn't make it home to his family. Another member of our industry lost to his life on the road. My understanding is he was a lifetime truck driver. He's had lots of experience. As I say, the comments that are out there, mate, those that have just said condolences and sorry to hear of your loss, mate, we really appreciate that because we've got to recognise what we give up in this industry to feed and clothe and look after Australia. But so often, mate, people make bloody outlandish comments that weren't there, people that don't know what they're talking about. They make it worse and harder. And there are times when you really wonder, Luke, if that was a member of your crew or your family or, another one of your employees, if you're the employer, would people just be so blatantly nasty?
What do they say?
And
what
it really doesn't understand it, mate.
What do they say?
Oh, look, what happened? He wouldn't know what he was doing. He must have been another, overseas driver and all that sort of stuff. And look, there's some terrible comments out there, and it's generally by people that don't know what they're talking about. And unless you were there, and of course Ronnie was the bloke, he doesn't have a chance to, say anything now. Again, I wasn't there. I hope there's a proper investigation. And I've asked for this for years, Luke. I don't want to know that, Rod Hannafy did the wrong thing because he was involved in an accident. I want to know what those factors were that contributed to it. And is it something we can address or improve so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah,
so every time we lose one, it's a tragedy.
This is what's happened since the internet. and people sit behind their keyboards and become experts, and they're never taken to court for defamation or libel. And people say the most outrageous things because they hear something, or they just type out.
Somebody else said that this is what happened, and again, they weren't there, mate. And like, I said years ago, and I'm sure you've heard it, mate. Your mum used to tell you, if you can't say something nice,
don't say anything at all.
Don't say anything at all. Keep your mouth shut. So look, to those that have offered condolences, really appreciate it. It's a terrible tragedy. Mate, he was a really affable sort of a bloke, and his family's going to miss him. We hope that people get to where they want to go safely, but we do have a responsibility, Luke. I don't know whether you've seen it. Just recently, there was Channel 7 footage of someone overtaking a road train. Now, as they pull out, you can see they're over double lines. They're on a blind sweeping curve, so there's no way known. They could have seen if something was coming, and yet every day somebody will do something that stupid to put somebody's life at risk. Now, if it's only your own, and it's your own stupidity, and it's a single vehicle accident, mate, you did it. There may have been contributing factors, and we know the road and the vehicle and the weather and all of those things play a part. But if you make that effort when you go out to drive to do the best you can, and we know most people do, but we know others don't. So, mate, for goodness sake, try and drive as safely as you can to get home to a family that we in our industry don't see enough of.
And if you don't know what you're talking about and you're just going off hearsay, shut up.
Yes.
Rod, yesterday we did a mini sort of it was not quite a podcast. It was a little teaser for this morning.
99.5.
Yeah, 99.5, because today's really 100. And one of our contributors posted a video, and they're standing by a railroad. Thank you. With a freight train going by. And can we play the video, or have you got it there? You'll find
not right now. I find it now.
Okay. It was in last night's podcast because I don't want to misquote him, but he basically there's a freight train going by, and he said, "Look at this fantastic thing. It's a train. What?" We don't need proof again that we don't need so many trucks on the road because the rail can do it all. And I said, well, no. Well, the rail serves its purpose, but the rail can't deliver your groceries to Coles or loading dock. You need DCs. Anyway, once again, there's a strong feeling out there that why do we need trucks when we've got rail? We don't need a bitumen highway. We have a steel railway ready to go.
Yes, and I'd like to see him go and put his own train on that steel railway.
A UHF isn't just an accessory. It's a lifeline. It's exactly why I'm stoked to have GME on the Bonafide podcast. They're the only Australian manufacturer of UHF CB radios and emergency beacons, operating right out of a purpose-built HQ in Sydney. You want to know how many locals they keep in steady work? 250. And the gear they build doesn't just keep the Bonafide family safe on the road. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. If you love Truckie Tuesday, back the brand that backs us. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description. Let's get back to the chat.
And deliver anything to anybody. Mate, look, rail does some things very well, but it cannot do all of those parts in the supply chain. And it's simply, people that say, put it all on the train. Okay, if everybody wanted to move everything from Sydney to Melbourne on the train tomorrow, it'd take you 5 days to get your 2 cartons onto the train because 10 other thousand people are going to be standing there at the end of the rail line wanting to put their 2 cartons on the train. And then it's going to be that big a train. You're going to be sitting on the side of the road for an hour waiting to go past at a railway crossing while you're there in your car going to visit grandma. And then when it gets to the other end, there's going to be a queue of 10,000 people trying to get their stuff off the other end of the train. Mate, it's people that say it don't think about what they're saying.
You know how I'm an ideas man.
Oh, bingo.
What you do is you have a great big long train and you invite people to drive up with their shopping trolleys
Yeah.
and pick the carriage, and they buy their groceries directly from the train. Yeah, sorry.
It might walk in the middle of the Nullarbor, mate, but it's not going to. You imagine that in the middle of Toorak?
People drive
5
miles.
kilometre long train in the middle of Toorak, that work.
People drive miles to a Costco because they think they're saving $1.50 on 10 dozen rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah. Well, Adamo here says, I'm a freight train driver. Infrastructure wouldn't handle it. Very true. Very true.
Yes. At one stage, we had 27 different rail gauges in Australia. Now, I've got to say, I think America does it better. Their network does work more efficiently. Ours hasn't. And again, you can't just go and buy your own train and put it on there and deliver goods, Luke. Good luck doing that. Unless somebody's going to go and get one of those little old, you remember the old days you had the thing with the little up and down lever in the middle and you powered yourself up and down the train line?
Yeah, what were they called?
I can just imagine that'll work while there's a 2 kilometre ore train sitting behind you.
What were they called? Yes, it was a two-person thing and you pump the handle.
I don't know. Why are you asking me?
Well, someone, Damo, the train driver, he'll know. Anyone who knows, what was that contraption called? It was a two-person thing, and you pump the handles like a slippery, like a seesaw handle, and it manoeuvred you along the railway tracks. What was that? What was that piece of equipment called?
What are you talking about, like in the olden days?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, Laurel and Hardy did it well, didn't they?
Oh, Cameron says pump cart.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know, would you? They could have said anything, and you would have no idea.
A pump cart.
A pump. It sounds right. It sounds right. Jonathan, I'm a Sabi working for a railroad system in Australia, taking products from Brisbane to Parkes. We need both industries to work together.
Of course we do. Of course you do. And I'm not being cruel to the guy who posted that. I mean, that's fine, but I'm just saying rail has its place. But rail cannot replace trucks, and trucks aren't replacing rail. The two should be able to work together. But you can't pick up your 12 rolls of toilet paper from Central Railway Station.
No, it wouldn't go down very well, I wouldn't think.
Hey, listen, Rod, the Viva Energy refinery fire, how's that affecting diesel? Does it affect diesel? How's it affecting the trucking industry?
Mate, at this stage, listening to the news yesterday on the way down, they're saying that they're back to 50%. They'll be back to 80% next week. They had stocks. They're saying it won't affect us again at this time of, diesel shortages and concerns about where we go for the future. And again, it's not just today, Luke. It's a month away. Will the war sort itself out? Will it get sorted in the end that we end up back to where we were? We've let all of the manufacturing in Australia disappear and the fuel refining. We're hoping that this Taroom trough will supply it, but that's 5 years away. So, mate, there's a lot of stuff got to be done. And as you've said before, we are girt by sea. So, yes, somebody needs to find out who screwed up all that storage of our fuel in America. Yeah. I believe a lot of money was wasted doing that. And, it's handy to be able to, let's get it from America. That's a good idea.
Okay.
So, yes, we've got to solve the long-term problem, mate.
We've got someone online. Hello.
Hello, is this Jonathan?
Hello, Kelsey. How are we?
G'day, Jonathan. Where are you?
Hello, Luke. How are we?
We're good, mate. Where are you?
And just quickly, is this the same Jonathan that writes us our Truckie songs?
Yes, it is.
Hey!
Jonathan. We love your work. We love your work, brother. Thank you very much for your contribution. You're going to get some merchant. Can I say that?
Yeah, sure.
Can I also give away some Nature or
no, just merchandise.
Can I give away a CB radio?
No.
Can I give away anyway? Jonathan, go.
Look, I drive for a subby for the railway system for a particular company, and I go from Brisbane to Parkes twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. We need both systems to work together for this to work. Like, it's all well and good to say that, trains will do the job. Well, not really. Because the products I'm carting are like the juice and all that sort of stuff, and that goes over to WA.
I never thought about how like juice and stuff would get over to. I never ever.
What do you mean?
Well, I never imagined like juice sitting on like on a train before. You know,
juice.
I know.
Juice doesn't need refrigeration either. You imagine all the food stuffs that we transfer across Australia.
You look at when you buy juice in the shopping centre, it's not in the refrigeration.
I know.
That's right.
I just had like this very visual image of like juice sitting in a train, and I was like, wait a second. I've never thought of that before.
You think about one bottle of Golden Circle, right, sitting on its own, waiting. Jonathan?
Yep.
Tell me this. Are you happy with what Kelsey's done with your songs?
Yeah, they're great, mate. They're good.
We're going to play one. Are we going to play one today?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll play one later.
We're going to play one when we finish up today. Jonathan, you drive carefully, brother, and we love your contribution.
Mate, I'll keep making more songs and I'll send them.
Hells yeah.
Good on you, buddy. 02 91 289311. I've got a question for you. Just out of left field. So juice doesn't need refrigeration. How do they make UHF milk? Is it UHS? What UHD? What is it?
UHF.
Oh, sorry. I've got GME on the brain. I've got GME. GME should make UHF milk. What is it?
No.
UHD.
I know what you mean.
Long life.
Long life milk, yeah.
Long life milk. How does that work?
I don't know. Can you fix your hair, please?
I can't see it.
You need to slick it back.
How do they make long life milk, Rod?
I don't know, mate, but there is a lot of stuff that is, of course, refrigerated. Your packets of frozen chips and your frozen veggies and, all of your fruit
McCain,
and all of those
you've done
things.
it again.
Yes, well, them and others, mate, but those sorts of things too. They go on a truck, and whilst the train might carry them across the Nullarbor or it might carry them to Darwin, you still need a truck to deliver it to the supermarket and all of those things. So, look, we understand some things, and of course, rail does a terrific job with coal. And ore and those things, major bulk commodities. But then you look at all the grain. A lot of grain goes on trains. But you've still got to get a bloke to pick it up from the farm to get it to the silo, to get it to the railhead, to get it to the export, to get it into the cities, to get it produced. So, yes, and look, air does, contributes to transport. So does sea. So, it depends on what the product is. People look for efficiencies. And that's, as I say, where our road transport industry here operates at world's best practice. We do it the best we can, but certainly the way that the cost of fuel had gone up and so substantially, we know it's affected some businesses. We know some people were not passing it on, refusing to cover that cost or even discuss it. So it's good that this thing's out there, mate. But to those doing the wrong thing, we hope you get yours.
Yeah, absolutely. But can someone tell me how they make UHF? I can't believe I said UHF.
I know.
I'm thinking GME should bring out UHF milk. I got
terrible idea.
Just some news coming through live as we speak. Donald Trump is saying that the truce extension is unlikely, so the clock's ticking down. A US delegation has headed to Pakistan for potential peace talks with Iran. He says nobody's playing games. The negotiating team is going to include the US Vice President J.D. Vance, as well as the US President's Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. But he says an extension is unlikely. When will this thing end?
Am I the only one that is just over it? I'm so over it. I'm tired of hearing about Trump. I know it's important, and I know like being part of like the news industry, I should care more, but I'm just exhausted about it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, if you drove a V8, you'd be very keen for it to be over.
Yeah. Well, Justin, just so you know, says heat treated so it can be shelf stored. That's how you get lifelong milk, Luke. Don't you reckon lifelong milk tastes better than normal milk? The milk in those tiny,
it's creamier.
The little plastic cups, I love that milk. If I could get that milk in a bottle, delicious.
This is a trucking program, Kelsey.
Oh, sorry.
You're out of your lane.
Rod, do you like little milk?
Mate, I know the ones you're talking about. Yes, you go to a motel, they're stuck in the fridge and they tend to work really well.
They're as big as a thimble. the little thimble
I
size.
love those ones.
You need more.
They taste better than normal milk.
Makes one cup of tea.
Oh, yes. But see, I've actually gone now, instead of buying coffee at a roadhouse, I go and buy a 2-litre bottle of milk. And I say, if I take a swig out of this, will you give me a hit of chocolate? Because, yes, buying coffees for $7 every time you pull up at a roadhouse gets expensive, and milk's probably better for you. So that's just one of those things. And look, it's got harder on the road. We know that, Luke. Getting good food in roadhouses is difficult. A lot of people have got out of the roadhouses for things and that as well. So the long-term thing, and look, I did a spot. I'm trying to get roads fixed, Luke. You know that I've done that for years and years. There's a bump on the Hume Highway. Now, the Hume Highway is just a little back road, you know, it doesn't have many vehicles on it. It's not really important. Only 3,000 trucks a night run up and down the Hume. And there's a drop off a bridge. Now, it's a savage drop. And it's doing damage to the road, and it's doing damage to the truck, and it's doing damage to the driver. So I rang Vic Roads, I put in 4 complaints, and it's still there. Someone's even painted something in it, so somebody else has noticed. So I thought, I'll ring the local paper. And the Euroa Gazette, talked to the journalist there, and he said, I know that, bub. He said, that's a bugger of a thing. So he's already spoken to the minister's office, and then I did a spot on ABC radio about it because they picked it up as well. And I've said I want a little bit of empathy for truck drivers. So we're on Truckie Tuesday, Luke. You've said you've learnt a lot since we started.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of other people that haven't. We don't teach people to share the road with trucks when they get their licence. And if you're a pedestrian, you wouldn't step straight out in front of a bus and expect it to stop because you stepped in front of it. But every day, somebody looks and says, there's a truck coming. I've got to get in front of it.
Yeah.
Or there's a truck. Might hold out. I've got to get past it. And they risk our lives. And we go out there to deliver every single thing to every single person. And I want your listeners to look around them, Luke. There is not one single thing around them. Their furniture, their food, their coffee, the parts for the car, the fuel for the car, anything they use in business, in manufacturing, gets on a truck, if not once, a dozen times. Now, that bloke goes to work to feed his family, and all we ask on the road is that people respect the size and weight of trucks. We have the biggest trucks in the world. Sometimes they take a little bit longer to get going. They need a bit more room to stop. They need a bit more room to turn, but they could have your freight on the back of them. And the only thing we don't deliver is babies.
That's very good.
Now, just quickly, did you really want to say something?
I've got something to say.
Okay, go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, Michael wants to know, does Rod know why the Montague Street Bridge in Melbourne has been hit 79 times in 10 years? How do truck drivers get their license? I wonder sometimes.
It's like, I feel like Ray Hadley with the Gorston Gorge.
What's that?
That Gorston Gorge, and the Sydney Harbour Tunnel is often closed because oversized vehicles go through. Rod, what's the story?
2 factors. Yes, we've argued that we need better training for drivers. And look, I only had this discussion with a bloke yesterday. They're talking about an extra licence class. Now, if you go to employ a truck driver, he turns up at your doorstep, he shows you his licence, and you say, he's got a licence. Right, mate, jump in that, be in Melbourne in the morning. Now, as an employer, you've failed your duty of care to make sure the bloke actually knows what the hell he's doing before you've let him loose out on the road. He's turned up with a licence. That doesn't mean he knows everything about every type of freight, every type of truck, the restrictions on certain loads, dangerous goods requirements, type 2 permits for B-doubles, HML routes, all of those things. So the employer has a role to say, do you actually understand? Are you aware of this before he lets him go? Now, if you're a bloke trying to get into the industry, and we know that people aren't as much as we need, Luke, we have a shortage of drivers, and that's a whole other argument we could go through 3 podcasts on. But if you want to get into the industry and you go and have a look at how I get my licence, and one bloke says, mate, I've got a 5-day course, it'll teach you everything you need to know and give you a good start, but it costs $5,000. And then he looks and says, here's Fred again, that bastard Fred. He'll give you a licence in 1 day. Now, the fact that he's got the licence doesn't mean that he's fully trained.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard in this industry to learn everything because there are so many different sectors to it. And I've got to say, GPS has a role. Now, if you're in your car and you log in, I want to go from here to there, it takes you the shortest and the easiest route. It doesn't say, are you in a truck?
Yeah.
Are you this high? Are you that heavy? So, people log it in the truck. They use the car system. It says, go here. They follow it. And then, oh, goodness me, there's a bridge that I didn't know about or something like that. In the States, they've outlawed trucks using car systems. But to get one for a truck here is very expensive and you've got to keep paying upgrades.
Okay, I hear that. But something I don't understand is that every low-level bridge that I've ever seen has its height clearly marked.
Yes.
And surely every truck driver should know the height of their truck.
And that's what you just said. They should know. There is a standard, 4.3. Sometimes you go to 4.6 for stock crates and things. But if you've got an odd load, Luke, something sticking up that you don't know, then you should measure it. You should know your route, where you're going, and are there any bridges? And, of course, if you get to that, you should open your bloody eyes and look and go, I don't think that's going to fit, instead of driving straight through underneath and then blocking the traffic for a day.
Now, Luke.
Yeah.
Rod,
you just sent me a message.
Yeah, I did. Rod and I were briefly talking about this yesterday. I sent you the link, Luke, so you can watch it on your computer. But there has been some dramatic video of a truck being dangerously overtaken on a busy regional West Australian road.
Yeah.
Now, Rod, you have seen this video.
I'm looking at it now.
Yep.
I'm going to play it right now for everyone.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at
It's
this.
a white car. It's an SUV, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. See the double lines?
He's over on the shoulder now. It's a Mitsubishi.
Mm-hmm.
White. Oh, my God.
How?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be
God.
overtaking for so long.
Oh, my God.
So you imagine the bloke coming the other way in the truck.
Oh, another truck. That's so bad.
And you can see he's got
so
everything
bad.
locked up. He's got smoke pouring off the tyres because the person in the car was too stupid.
Yeah.
That is
Right? And that happens every single day, Luke. It happens every time we go to work because someone is too impatient or too stupid. Now, we talk about licenses again. The fact that you have a car license doesn't mean that you're a safe driver. And look, we have a responsibility as drivers, but then I'm sure you've seen other footage of people doing phenomenal speeds and, stealing cars, and we can't control that. You can't make them drive safe. They're not going to do it. You can only do what you can do for yourself. But when people take a risk like that, when the bloke pulled out, he wouldn't have been able to see the road around the corner. He can see the double lines. That's what they're there for, to say, do not overtake here. And what if he'd had a family in there and it had been a car coming the other way that hadn't reacted as quickly or something like that? Why must people do something when they can't see enough road space to overtake? Sit back, wait, be patient, for Christ's sake.
Oh, that was so. Maybe I'm just like too much of a nervous driver, which like also isn't good. But I never overtake trucks unless I'm in like a three-lane
highway. Yeah.
Highway. Maybe it's just because I'm a bit more empathetic towards truck drivers now.
But you're not in a hurry. You drove most of the way from Sydney to Dubbo.
Yeah, because you bloody wouldn't do it.
I was asleep.
He was asleep, and you were still grumpy.
But you're a good driver.
Yeah,
you are a good
obviously.
driver. I'll give you that. I wanted to talk about this. This is another pretty serious story. I've just got to find it here again. Where have I gone? A 23-year-old Victorian truck driver has been arrested across the border in South Australia for false statements and fatigue-related offences. Thursday, April 16, officers from South Australia's Police's Heavy Vehicle Enforcement Unit stopped the B-double at Wingfield at about 9:15 a.m. At that time, it'll be alleged the driver failed to present a work diary and made false statements about the work he was carrying out, according to South Australia Police. Rod, are you across this?
Mate, not that one specifically, no. There has been a blitz on, and I wrote a piece on LinkedIn. They say that there were 5,000 fatigue offences defected last year by the NHVR. Now, I said, okay, if those 5,000, if 4,200 were a bloke drove 10 minutes to get to a toilet or a food vendor place, or, you know, they forgot to tick a box or write a date down, then that's not a blitz that justifies going out and hammering every other truck driver for not ticking a box. If there's a problem like that in the industry, we need to know what it is. But they've got to be upfront, and they've got to be genuine, and they've got to tell us what the issue is, not just come out with this blatant thing that they've got 5,000 fatigue offences, because then we don't know what to fix, Luke. Now, there's a difference. You know, in your car, you can, if you are stupid enough, jump in the car and drive from Sydney to Brisbane without a stop. Would you do that? No, you wouldn't, you would think, but some people do. There is no law other than common sense that says you shouldn't drive a car if you're tired. And yet we know people that drive to and from work every day, jump in a car and drive interstate, and look, they get affected by fatigue like everybody does. In our industry, we have all these laws and penalties, and we are not allowed to legally drive whilst fatigued. That's written into the regs. But, mate, we are human. There are things that affect what we do and how we do it, and we don't go to work to break the law. We understand the law there is to protect everybody, like we were talking about double lines just a few seconds ago. But then with our job, because the fact that I'm living in a truck 6 days a week, and it's my kitchen and my workhouse and my lounge room and my bedroom as well, because that's where I'm right now in room 200 in the K200, mate, it's something where that job people don't have any empathy for, they don't have any understanding, and all we want is a fair go because we want to be safe. We want everybody else to be safe. But we don't teach people what they need to know, and we don't have enough flexibility, we don't have enough rest areas, and we certainly need better roads because they affect people's lives as well.
Okay.
Now, Luke, again, go to your emails. I just forwarded you an email from Justin. Rod, you haven't seen these pictures, but I will forward them to you after this. Justin said, "G'day legends, here's more pics from the road of the filth we have to deal with. It's the Ampol West Wylong. Girls in kitchen said they'd pass it on, weren't too concerned." So I'm just going to pull it up here. Luke, I've forwarded it to you.
Yeah, it hasn't come through.
I'll refresh your page.
I don't know how to.
Does it have to deal with? Now, there is very dirty sink. The showers look not very great. Yeah, I don't know. To me, that doesn't look, toilet paper on the ground. I mean, is this just, oh God, that toilet is just quite literally a shit amenity. Is that what you guys have to deal with?
Mate, again, two sides to it. Even, we appreciate the road authorities building us toilet blocks on the side of the road, the poor people that have to go and clean them. And, mate, I rang Vic Roads one day and I said, look, mate, this wasn't me. I'm just making you aware someone had gone into a toilet cubicle, and we know what the toilet bowl is for. That's what you sit on and you shit in, and somebody shit on the floor. Now, there are times when it's a truck stop and they say, we'll just go in there and use that and wouldn't this be fun? Well, I don't know. People's brains obviously don't work really well. The fact that people do that sort of stuff, I cannot fathom it. But then, of course, the next time they want a toilet, would they have done it if they wanted a toilet? Now, we rely on those facilities. We rely on truck stops, and people that make it so hard for them to keep them clean because it's not theirs. It's not important. But, of course, they wouldn't expect anybody to go and do that in their own home toilet. So it's two sides. There are people that do stupid stuff, and then some poor bugger that works in that roadhouse has got to clean it. And, of course, the people in there, they have a responsibility to supply clean facilities because we go in there and we spend our money in there and we buy their food and we buy their fuel. So there are two sides to it. We hope that they do the right thing in keeping them clean and looking after us. But I've spoken to people in truck stops and they've said, you wouldn't believe that somebody would go and shit in a shower.
Yeah, I know.
The mentality of the people that make it hard for others simply because they're stupid, I don't know what we do with it, Luke. I really don't.
Well, there you are. Can we move on? Speaking of places to stop, and Kelsey loves a road trip.
Do I?
And I sent you both this story on the weekend, but I'm going to bring it up now. This is just something a little bit fun to finish with today. I was looking at Domain, one of the real estate websites, Rod.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is an entire town up for sale.
For sale.
What?
For $400,000.
What?
It's the Queensland town of Kaladi. I've sent you the story. Cooladdi. Kaladi. And I'll just read you a little bit about this because I want to get Carol Yarrow on the podcast very soon. Carol Yarrow laughed when a friend called her early in 2023 and suggested they buy the town of Kaladi in central Queensland. She said, I thought you've got to be kidding me. But Joe and I decided to take a look anyway. Yarrow's friend, Joe Cornell, had been mulling a tree change. And Yarrow, who was working in motel management, had grown up not too far from Cooladdi, Cooladdi. So they drove 9 hours inland from Brisbane to size up the town. It's on the edge of the outback, full of mulga trees and red dirt. And there's a picture there of the Cooladdi railway station, which is no longer in use, but look, there it is. Cooladdi, postcode 4479, was once a bustling outpost with close to 300 residents. It was a thriving metropolis.
Oh.
But the town's train station, the police station, the school closed. So basically all that's left now is a post office, a motel, and the general store. That's the town of Cooladdi.
And a roadhouse.
And the store is called the Fox Trap.
Oh, yeah.
Food, cold beer, motel, UHF, Channel 33.
Hey.
Look at that, Cooladdi.
It's actually quite beautiful, isn't it?
And she says, look, it's surrounded by large stations, lots of station hands. It's the only facility within about 100 kilometres. And the Fox Trap is the lifeblood of the community. The new buyer will operate the only diesel and unleaded petrol tanks in the area, and they'll also be responsible for 2 twice-weekly mail deliveries. There are 4 motel rooms, Rod. There's a general store.
Yes.
The Roadhouse Kitchen. Apparently it's popular for trucks that come past. There's a picture inside there. Look at that. And they're playing, what's that balancing game? Yeah, with the pieces of wood.
Jenga.
They're playing Jenga on the table in the middle of the corner store, which is also the post office. Anyway, it's up for sale for $400,000. Cooladdi.
$400,000. You can own a whole town.
For a town.
For a town of 4 motel rooms, a general store that also sells grog, and a post office and a railway station that has the platform there.
Does the trains come there?
No, I don't think so. But Rod, have you ever stopped?
No, train stop.
Have you ever
Mate,
stopped
I haven't
at
been there. I
Cooladdi?
know where it is. It's on the Julia Creek Development Road. So when you go up the centre towards Mount Isa, you turn right and you go across through there. I've never actually been past it. It's not a road that carries a lot of traffic, but where they say, of course, big properties, a lot of stock trucks and grain trucks would be travelling out through there. So good luck to them, mate. I'm glad that they enjoyed their time there and that somebody takes it on and provides those facilities to all around them.
Well, I'm going to try and get Carol, who runs it with Joe, and it's up for sale. Why don't we try and get them on?
Yeah.
Before they sell. This will sell fast.
I wonder.
There'll be people bidding from everywhere.
From everywhere. But, I mean, they've got to get their fuel from somewhere. So, they've only got sheep and cattle stations around them. So if they have the only unleaded and diesel fuel pump, they're a hub. If they're the only place that sells cold beer, they're a massive hub, and they're the post office. Would you move 9 hours inland from Brisbane to Kaladi to own a town? You can make yourself mayor.
Yeah, well, it's quite literally the plot line to Schitt's Creek. You know the TV show?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
that
quite
was a good
literally
show.
the plot line. Yeah.
That was a good show.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kaladi, I thought maybe, Rod, because you've been everywhere. Who sang that?
That wasn't in my song, but no, not this time.
Who sang it?
I've been everywhere, man.
Lucky Star.
Lucky Star. Well done. Lucky Star. I've been everywhere. Anyway, that's Kaladi. Rod, we'll let you go very soon. We're going to play a Jonathan song here in just a moment. Any last words?
Mate, I did have one incident on the Hume last week. They do one thing really good. They've got some flashing 80-kilometre signs that come up when there is a vehicle approaching from a side road on the Hume Highway. So if there's a car there, you slow down, allows them to get out and join the road. Oh, mate, in his BMW, I think it was, has slowed down. So we've come out the other side and he's still doing 80 well into the 100 zone. So I've indicated, I've got out beside him to overtake. Geez, I'm only doing 80 in 100 zone. I'll speed up. So, of course, he speeds up and sits beside me. So now I've got all this traffic queued up behind me. So I blew the horn once. He backed off, slowed down. That's fine. We get up the road. I've caught him again. Like, obviously didn't have cruise control, wasn't watching the speed. So I give him a quick flash. He just sits there. So I pull out to overtake. What does he do? Speed up again, Luke. So, look, we've got dual lanes so that you can have people travelling at different speeds, but for goodness sake, watch what's going on around you. Don't sit beside trucks and leave us out to be the bad guy. And we do have places to be, Luke. So, yeah, give us a fair go and just watch what you're doing on the road, no matter where you are, and try and get home safe, eh?
I've got a Truckie thought for the day before we listen to one of Jonathan's songs. You ready for this? Statistics show that women are more attracted to men who drive and own expensive vehicles.
Yeah.
If that was true, all truckies would be dead set chick magnets.
Oh, true. Well, that's why there's a Truckie calendar.
You think about that. Why are women, and you're a woman. Well,
I'm not really that attracted.
Are you attracted to a sports car? I mean, you got a red Ferrari, 2 doors. There's no boot space. There's no luggage. You can't even put golf clubs in it. And yet women are attracted to these cars. Are they? Are they?
Who's saying this? I don't really care.
Are women attracted to hybrids and electric cars anymore?
Oh, fuel efficiency.
No,
absolutely.
Anyway, truckies should be chick magnets.
Yeah,
if those statistics are true. Rod, safe driving, mate. We want to have you back very, very soon. Thank you so much. If you've got any feedback, please let us know. What is it, Luke? What am I?
Luke Boner Radio Guy. We are going to change that soon, so it is a bit easier.
At gmail.com. Keep an eye out for us because Kelsey will let you know how you can get hold of the merchandise. And a big, big hello to GME. We love GME. GME, whether you're passing vital road info, whether you're with a convoy or not, if there's a hazard ahead, let people know. Get off Channel 40 because it ain't a karaoke bar.
I know. Wait, just one thing before we go. Jonathan said, that's how Northern Territory iced coffees are made. They're made with powdered milk. Back to our milk conversation. Powdered milk in an iced coffee. Sorry, I've never known that.
Well, there's a thing called Coffee Mate. Remember that, Rod?
Yes, I do, mate, yes. And you used to have the Nescafe in the little tube, with the coffee and milk, yes.
We had that at boarding school, and it was like a big toothpaste tube.
Condensed milk?
And that's the one, yes.
Yum. I could eat
I know, anyway. you could just eat it all day. Anyway, UHF, the best of the business, GME backing Truckie Tuesday, a family-owned business and an Australian manufacturer. GME.
Yeah.
And tell them that we sent you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's it. A big, massive cheer for the folk at GME. Thank you for keeping the Aussie transport industry talking. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description. And we'll see you next week.